Hello, Ms. Phillip, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. If you can just keep your microphone muted until you're called upon. Ms. Poser, can you hear me? Can the user that just joined the meeting as unknown please identify yourself? Can the user that just joined the meeting as an unknown user please identify yourself?
Yes, this is Rob Van Zella.
Thank you. If you can just keep
You're
your
welcome.
microphone muted until called upon. And Ms. Poser, can you hear me? Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular council meeting of Monday, September the 14th. I'd like to thank everyone for their patience as we're getting set up here. As you may know, council and staff have been committed to finding ways for our public to join and participate in our meeting while we're dealing with the public health orders. So our intent here tonight is to simulate a live in-person meeting as best we can using the technology that we have. So it just took a while to make sure that everyone was online and all ready to go. So thank you for bearing with us. I do wish to begin today by acknowledging that we are meeting on the territory of the Sooke Nation, and we're here today with gratitude. Before we get into the details and the agenda tonight, however, I do want to take time just to give a moment and some words of gratitude and to recognize one of our own, and that is our Fire Chief, Ken Mount. Chief Mount, as you know, has been with us for nearly 2 years, and in his time he's done and made tremendous efforts within our fire department. And recently I've been advised that himself, along with seven chiefs total in Canada, have received a very exclusive designation right out of Ottawa, and that is that he has completed the Executive Chief Fire Office program. And in history now, only 114 chief officers have this specific designation. So the program was called the CFO program and was limited to career fire officers. Now it's been renamed as the Executive Chief Fire Officer program. So the heart of the program consists of a number of competencies within 7 important themes related to management within the fire service. And these specific themes are leadership, human resources, governance, business acumen, finance, fire prevention, and fire technical. And a new component of the program is also an annual maintenance requirement, and with the intent to ensure the ECFO is contributing to fire service and staying apprised and aware of changes within the industry. The program hits all the performance requirements compatible with Fire Officer NFPA 1021, the Advanced Fire Chief Competency. This is our first chief, as I'm aware, to have achieved this level, and so I really wanted to take this moment to give Chief Mount our thanks, our gratitude, and just his commitment to service excellence. We're very proud of you, and we know that this is not your formal certificate, but it'll something that will do very well. And as this is going public now, I felt I didn't want to wait till the real thing arrived in the mail. So let's just celebrate our chief tonight, and let's give him all of our thanks for all the work that he's done. Thank you so much, Chief. And so like the political person that I am, it's time for a photo op, so I just wanted to do that. Thank you very much, Chief. We really appreciate it, and yes, thank you everyone for allowing me that opportunity to share this exciting and wonderful news with our community. Wonderful. Thank you, Chief. Okay, so item 6 is the first motion that we'll approve. That's Ministerial Order M192, and that is that Council is holding this meeting without members of the public in attendance in accordance with Ministerial Order M192, as Council Chambers does not have the capacity to safely accommodate the unknown number of public participants wishing to attend, and that Council is committed to ensuring openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability through the submission of written comment and the provision of live and recorded broadcasts of the meeting. So that's the first motion that I'll ask Council to approve, moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. As you know, tonight we do have a number of speakers that are registered, and this will sort of showcase why we would not have been able to have folks fit into the agenda or into our chambers here tonight. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. I just need the slide up on approval of the agenda, please, because I know there's a few changes to the order. Sorry, we're stressing out here. Sorry. Just bear with us. We're running a lot of software and hardware at the moment and using a lot of bandwidth here.
Oops.
That's our last one. Just be a moment, please, everyone. Thank you. Okay, so council, for tonight's agenda, we're looking for council to approve that the agenda for the September 14th regular meeting of council be adopted with addition of the following supplemental information. Item 8.1, correspondence, 15.3, correspondence, 15.4, correspondence, and 11.4, rise and report of the September 14th in camera. Moved by Councillor Beto. Seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. With that rise and report, though, of September 14th, is that the correct date there?
The September 8th is already in your agenda. The September 14th will be the one that you just passed with the appointment to the Board of Variance.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much for that point of clarity. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. I'm sorry, everyone. I drank too much water and it went down the wrong tube. Okay. We have minutes here for adoption, and we're looking that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as amended: our July 27th, 2020 regular council meeting and July 28th, 2020 council meeting. Committee of the whole. Pardon me. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Beddoes. Questions or corrections? Councillor Bateman in the microphone.
Yeah, just one tonight, and that is on July 27th council meeting, page 27 of tonight's agenda. And this is a mistake I make all the time myself. The official name of Searchin is the Sooke Region Communities Health Network. It's not communities singular. So.
Thank you for that. I make the same error. Okay, all those in favor of adoption? Opposed? That's two is carried unanimously. Item 8 tonight is our first delegation, and this is a delegation from Transition Sooke. Our presenter is Susan Belford. We do have 5 minutes allocated for tonight's delegation, so what I will do is set a timer, and at the 4.5 minute mark, I will give a big wave so that perhaps you may be able to see me doing a wave at 4.5, and that would just be a signal to wind up, and then I'll come in at 5 minutes. I don't want to cut you off, but we are just mindful of the time and getting through the agenda. So on this point, I will turn this over. Yes?
I'm going to have to recuse myself as the former president of Transition Sooke and still involved with the Facebook page for the organization.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bateman, for stepping out. And I will set the timer and over to our delegation. Thank you and welcome. Go ahead, please. Ms. Belford, we're waiting for your presentation.
Ms. Belford, can you hear me? Your microphone is still muted.
The audio that's going through the Teams isn't working.
So you can't hear me? Guess not.
Is that because your microphone is muted?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Belford, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Yep, I can hear you.
there we go.
Are
Okay.
we ready?
Yes, we see you. Are you able to share your screen okay?
Yes, I believe so. And here it is. Okay, so I'm not seeing
Yep, you're up.
what I'm sharing. Okay. It's challenging. I can't see what I'm sharing. That's the only thing. Here we go. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great, because I can't see it. So wish me luck. So I, first of all, Mayor Tate, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about the need to place the climate emergency front and center in Sooke's official community plan. Okay, why can't I change the slide? I'm not able to change the slide here.
I'm going to stop sharing your screen and I'll run the presentation for you and I will share my screen. So just tell me next slide, okay? Just
Next slide,
Just give me
please.
1 moment.
Oh, I have to stop sharing, I guess, don't I?
No, I think you're okay.
Okay. So
Just-
you're seeing the second slide?
No, just 1 moment. I'll tell you when we're ready here. Okay, can you see the presentation now?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. So go
And
ahead.
if you can move on to the second slide, that would be great. I'm not going to read all of the words on this slide, but what they show is that councillors, volunteers, and citizens want Sooke to be a place of well-being and environmental safety. Can you, next slide, please? So our situation is that Sooke adopted the CRD's declaration of a climate emergency in 2019 with a goal of carbon neutrality by 2030. The CRD will not come even close to meeting its 2020 targets. We're concerned about the 2030 ones. Climate change is already happening. It's inevitable, and it will radically change our community. As you can see, normal is now beginning to mean severe storms, floods, food shortages, wildfires, erosion, and drought. And of course, the most vulnerable people will be affected. We need to take action now to ensure carbon neutrality by 2030. Next slide, please. Sooke has no climate action plan to guide its official community plan, and the OCP's request for proposals failed to adequately address climate change. And the proposal from Dialogue, in turn, is almost silent on the climate emergency. We're not looking for a few aspirational words here. That won't change the system that drives climate change. That can only be achieved with an overarching framework that recognizes that the climate emergency impacts every aspect of community life. Effectively addressing the climate emergency is totally within the scope of an OCP. Next slide, please. 2017, the Local Government Act was amended to mandate municipalities to set greenhouse gas or GHG emission targets in their OCPs. Other municipalities have shown leadership and taken the climate emergency as an overarching frame for their OCPs. For example, Courtenay and Campbell River and others. A wealth of resources exist to show how to include climate action planning in an OCP. And we know that Dialogue, the consultant hired to run Sooke's OCP process, has substantial experience in including climate action planning in OCPs. Next slide, please. So in 2019, in People 2019, BC Statistics predicts an annual provincial population growth rate between the years 2019 and 2041 of 1.2%, declining to 0.7%, with Vancouver Island's rate being 8.8% overall. This is kind of hard to square with the figures in the Sooke Housing Needs Study from 2019, which suggests a 2.3% growth rate. Such a growth rate is not a practical plan to reduce carbon emissions. We know that 57% of GHGs in the capital region are caused by transportation. More growth will add more vehicles and more GHGs. Fossil fuel heating space is the second largest source. More buildings, many of them heated with natural gas, will add more GHGs. Tree and vegetation removal in and around Sooke will also remove our carbon sink and reduce ecological services provided by natural landscapes. And added roads will increase toxic runoff into creeks, and it will undermine the soil's capacity to retain water. Next slide, please. We've seen developments locally that destroy local ecosystems, and these reduce Sooke's resiliency to climate change. Increasing resiliency is an essential part of any municipal action plan on climate emergency. We have to increase food security, green spaces, biodiversity, natural drainage, wildlife corridors, and carbon sinks. Other communities in the CRD have found a way to limit their growth. Oak Bay, Metchosin, the Highlands. We could too. Next slide, please.
So we're over 5 minutes, but I know I added in more time, but I'll just I'll provide another minute and then I'll ask you to wrap up in this time.
Okay, thank you so much. What we're asking for is that the climate action be made the overarching framework for Sooke's new OCP, and to direct the community conversation on the OCP to address the climate emergency, and to amend Dialogue's terms of reference so that the whole OCP is seen through a climate emergency lens. Next slide, please. Sooke needs a serious plan to reach carbon neutrality. Sooke and Council recommend a practical OCP. In my mind, there's nothing more practical than addressing the certainty of the climate emergency. Last slide, please. Changing the terms of reference for Dialogue's contract will not alter its scope or value, but what it does change is the framework, which affects how the conversation is held. Sooke must develop a climate action plan, but until then, the OCP is the logical place to address the climate emergency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bedford and Transition Sooke, for the presentation today. We will certainly take this away with us, and we'll ask staff to share out the PowerPoint. Some of the white text was a little bit difficult to read from where we're sitting, but if we get a copy of it, then we can all read it in greater detail, and it can be shared with the OCP committee. So thank you so much for taking the time to work through the technology and for presenting to us today.
Thank you.
Ms. Machado?
To all the participants, I just wanted to add that if you did register to speak to this item, it will come up as your opportunity under public input in a few moments. So Mr. Dolan, if I could just ask you to turn your camera off, unless you had anything to add.
I just wanted to say that all council received the presentation by email.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everyone. Can we please get Councillor Bateman returned to the room? All right, so we'll continue on with item 9, please. And this is a report from our Chief Administrative Officer. Mr. McInnes, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one update today, and it's got to do with the request to the province to waive the penalties for property taxes this year based on the change in the homeowner grant. So our reading of the legislation suggests that once we set our tax date and that date passes, penalties are automatically put on to those that have not paid. Our reading of the legislation suggests that we don't have the authority to waive those penalties after that date, but the province does. My reading of the legislation suggested to me, and it's not clear, but suggested to me that the ministry in charge or that has the authority to waive penalties was the Ministry of Finance. So in your package, you see Minister James' response to the letter that we wrote, and her response is factually true. But the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing actually is the ministry that has the authority to waive penalties. So we have been in discussion with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and on Thursday last week, subsequent to this agenda being published, we did get some clarity. And the resolution that we used to send the letter to the Ministry of Finance is sufficient, but another requirement for us to carry on with this work and see if the penalties can be waived is a staff report that does identify the folios, the property identification numbers, and all of the taxes and penalty receivables that we are requesting be waived. So there was no staff report with that information. This came through a notice of motion from council. So I'm not sure at this point whether there has to be another report on a council agenda, or if we can put that information together and send it into Municipal Affairs and Housing and have them make a determination on the waiver of the penalty. One of the things that we found in our discussions with Municipal Affairs and Housing is this has not been targeted or flagged by them as being a widespread issue or request from other communities. But a lot of communities moved their penalty date from July 2nd. Some have moved it to the end of August and some to the end of October. So the assumption is as these dates come, they may get feedback from other communities that are experiencing the same thing. So long story short, we have to make the request to the Ministry of Finance or to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We will do that, but it may require an additional staff report to hit a council agenda.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. McInnes. So at this point, though, are you, because I would like to see this carry on, so do you require a motion from council to continue to either generate the staff report that we would send to the Ministry of Housing, or what exactly?
So the plan at this point is to gather and put together the information that's required, that would have been required in a staff report, and send that to Municipal Affairs and Housing. If they in fact require a staff report to be on a council agenda, you will see that on the next agenda. But we did get a note from the staffer that we've been working with that the resolution of council directing staff to request the order, and they did say that the resolution provided in the letter to the Minister of Finance is sufficient. So I'm thinking that if we can just compile the information that should have been in that staff report, we should be okay, but I'm not 100% certain.
But maybe we'll do a resolution. So what I you know, in my conversations with our MLA's office, it was made clear that this has not come up through other communities, and that's fine. But the other communities, as Mr. McInnes said, have changed their dates. Many have postponed them much later, or even found ways to apparently reduce the late penalty. So what I would like to do is a motion that, and I would like to see this advocacy work continue. And even if we're the only community that raises this, it's our residents that are struggling. So it's seniors that are mainly, as I understand, seniors over 80. And it was the province that changed the system this year, and it just got difficult. So in many cases, This was right when everything was closed. So libraries were shut, social workers were closed out, the library was closed, access to computers, family visits, flight restrictions, ferry travel, all of that was in that situation. Now that things are more open in other jurisdictions, some may have the ability for family members or social work to help guide through the process. That was not available for our residents, so in that way, we may be a one-off community here. So I would like this work to continue. For some, it's very tough for them to come up with the late penalty. If they don't pay it, they will not be able to apply for the program next year. So the problem will continue to compound. And for seniors that are, this is like another added stress burden that I don't feel they need right now. So perhaps what we can do is that council receive the correspondence and direct the CAO to write to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to eliminate the late fees. Ms. Dumas? Or Ms. Gray, pardon me?
Just 3 words, just a point of clarification. So if I'm calculating, are you talking about the penalties for every deferment? Because there's some deferment clients that have paid their penalty. So I'm trying to narrow down the scope of what are you looking for, requesting to waive all the penalties that were assigned to deferment applicants that submitted late, or just the ones that are currently outstanding? Because there are quite a few that have already paid.
Well, some had to borrow money to pay the late penalty, because for someone that has a history of paying on time their whole life, they would never want to see a penalty there. So how they came up with the funding, I don't want to go into that, but it was more sort of in July. For me, it's the seniors that were over 80 that got hit with the late fee early on. And that's information I don't know, because when we started this process, it was a couple months ago, and I understand that things have changed.
I can just add a bit of clarity to that. Finance staff advised that there were approximately 20 of our Sooke residents that were in that situation, and approximately 15 have somehow come up with the money to pay that penalty, so they will not still be able to apply for the deferment next year. And there are approximately 5 residents who were unable to pay the penalty and are standing currently in default.
Yeah.
So I think Ms. Gray's question is, are we asking for that penalty be relaxed on all 20, or just the 5 that are still outstanding?
I'll open that for council decision. For me, it would be all 20, but we'll open that up for discussion. So that's the motion that I made, so looking for a seconder for that. Councillor Beddoes. So just looking now that council has a bit more context, are you comfortable looking at the 20, or, I mean, that's where I want to go, but I'll just want that to have more discussion on this. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, I think if we're going to do it for 5, we have to do it for 20, in all fairness. Now, I understand that the 15 have, through probably some great difficulty, ponied it up, and I think that should be given back, considering the other 5 we're going to grant exemption to. So, no, I'm all for all 20 of them.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lajeunesse, then McMath.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to the people who have come up with the funds.
Councillor McMath.
I just look at it from the opposite perspective, where if 15 have already done it, then why not? Like, and then continue with that for the 5, but also, like, what's the precedent for this for next year? Is that everyone that's late gets a deferral? Like, where's the line there?
Well, we'll find out. I don't know what next year is. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, this is unique situation. This is COVID. I doubt whether we're going to be dealing with this year after year. And somewhere along the line, it's going to be ironed out. This is a one-off, and I'd like to start off in the right foot personally. And you know, especially these are people over 80, and I'd like to default in their benefit.
Councillor Bateman?
I just had a question through you to Director of Finance. In a typical year, how many residents do default? Is there any average on that?
Through your worship, like in total or just the deferments clients? Like it's not very many, like we only collect, I think it was about $70,000 in penalties and interest income for all of our collections, so it's a very small amount. Yeah, the majority, I think we had almost 200, over 200, I believe, deferments. I can't remember the final count, so all of those, except for these 20, were filed on time.
So the difference for this year, I'll make a clarity, is that the province changed their system this year. So we have folks that were able to fill in forms and send them in, and this year the province changed how they do their process. And so that is what has caught these 20 residents off guard. And while there was notification that was mailed out, it was a one-time mailer, it directed these folks to go onto the website for more information. Many folks don't even use a computer. And so this is where if they had the letter and maybe were able to share it with visiting family or to meet with other seniors in another social setting, they could say, hey, did you get this letter? What does this all mean? And actually have some help navigate through the system. But so next year, now that we're in a different phase of the pandemic, the system is in place now. So once the folks are signed on, they have a new number now assigned to them that will stay with them forever, and the deferral process will happen automatically in that way. So this is where I see it as more of a one-time scenario because of the change that was made in the system. And also with the public health orders, there's a way for folks to actually have visiting family, carrieds come into the home and so forth. That was not available to the residents here up until this deadline. And that's the difference. That's why this year is extraordinary in that way. Councillor St. Pierre.
I was just going to reiterate a lot of that for Councillor McMath. My understanding is that specifically I was dealing with one person, and once the change has been made, it's ongoing. So this is not going to be a situation where it continues next year.
Yes.
Because it's been done, and that's it. So it's a one-shot deal.
Yeah. Ms. Gray.
Sorry, I just want to clarify Councillor St. Pierre's statement. Only if they've picked auto-renew. There is a bunch of people we've identified and just kind of followed up and said, you realize you didn't click auto renew. So just to clarify that, it isn't automatically renewing. You had to pick that option.
Thank you very much. That's a good thing to note to everyone.
Yes, but in this case, they have the same reference number in their system that will stay with them, because that created some confusion where folks had used one reference number for years and that reference number changed as well. And even if they get the notice in the mail this time, they'll be able to have assistance. We're open for people to come in and ask questions. We weren't open to the public fully up until, we did open for tax payments, but then that's where it was coming to be too late. So that's why we're looking at this. Okay? Anything from anyone else? Questions? Okay, so the motion's been moved and seconded. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now I'll add that some folks are still in the deferment process waiting to see if their property taxes are able to be deferred. So not everyone is even final in this case. Okay, that brings us, anything else, Mr. McInnes? So that was item 1. So looking for your verbal update. Anything further, please?
That's it for this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So this brings us to item 10, which is our public question and comment period. So typically this is where we set aside 10 minutes of the agenda to hear from members of the public. And I know that we have more speakers registered in order for that, but I think just given this is the first time we've actually had public participation in a while, as chair, I would just rule that we'll hear from all the speakers that are registered and ready to go, and that we will, as per normal, read out some of the first 2 minutes of written correspondence that has received. So for all the speakers that are queuing up to speak to us or to address us tonight, Ms. Mushada will call you out and invite you forward to make your comments. We ask that you speak within the 2 minutes, and in order to hear from everyone and carry on with the business, we will end you at the 2-minute mark. And we don't mean to be disrespectful, it's just to respect the other speakers and our staff presence and the other agenda items that we need to get through tonight. So we're not trying to cut you off, but it would be the same if you were here in person. You know that I would be turning off your microphone or asking you to wind up. So please bear with us as we go through this, and I'll leave it to Ms. Machada to introduce the speakers, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Got it. Ms. Turcott, you're up first. If you want to unmute your microphone and turn your camera on, you have the floor with council.
Okay, hi council. My name is Marie Turcott and I'm speaking on agenda item 15.3. So I'm calling tonight to ask council to take a formal position on the issue of anticoagulant rodenticides in response to the correspondences received on this issue. And I'd also like to ask Mayor and council to send a letter to BC in support of a province-wide ban on these products. So for some context on myself, I'm a third-year law student at UBC specializing in environmental law. In the past year, I produced a report on rodenticide regulation in Canada where I concluded that the continued use of anticoagulant rodenticides is entirely inconsistent with the government's obligations to its citizens and the environment. Many of BC's treasured and endangered wildlife species face serious risks of rodenticide poisoning. For wildlife today, whether you're a predator or prey or even an earthworm in the soil or a fish in the river, you're not safe from rodenticides. Not even our pets or children are safe. However, the existing laws regulating rodenticides do not protect against these risks. Though the province has the power to make laws to safeguard the environment where the federal government falls short, BC has been resistant to doing so. Because local governments lack jurisdiction to ban rodenticides in their municipalities, it is vital that Sooke petition BC to implement a province-wide ban. Not only is it clear that these poisons are highly dangerous, but they're also simply ineffective and counterproductive. Even pest control operators admit that while poisoning is cheap and easy, it's not a long-term solution. Rats are drawn to food and shelter, and so the primary method of pest control should be removing and securing attractants. Raptors and other predators serve as a free method of rat control, if we don't poison them. A single owl can eat around 1,000 rats per year. Other innovative methods, including CO2-powered traps and even rat contraceptives, have proven effective. Disabling our reliance on poisons will stimulate the development of humane, effective, and thoughtful solutions. A transition to chemical-free methods of pest control could be done with relative ease and prove cost-effective for both the consumer and the government in the long run. The pest control industry must evolve, and it has become clear that without regulatory pressure, they are unwilling to do so. So in closing, Sooke has the opportunity to follow other districts in becoming a national leader in the realm of environmental protection. Please don't let us down, and thank you for listening to me.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Turcott. I'll just interject by adding that Sooke does have an advocacy meeting scheduled with the Minister of Environment later this week, and we scheduled that through the UBCM program to enable us to advocate for this. So that's already in the works. Thank you.
Really amazing to hear. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Pfeiffer, you're up next if you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone.
So, my name is Deanna Pfeiffer of Saanich, 1870 Kings Road. I'm a director of Friends of Kings Community Nature Space and a member of Owl Watch BC. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm speaking tonight to encourage Council's urgent action on rodenticides, agenda item 15.3 for discussion tonight. In the event that the District of Sooke does not currently use anticoagulant rodenticides on its district-owned properties, the District of Sooke should formalize its current practice and policies on anticoagulant rodenticides to ensure the continued protection of ecological integrity for now and in the future. If the District of Sooke currently uses a pest control operator's services, which include anticoagulant rodenticides, I have attached a brochure in my correspondence for your reference. It is a company called Humane Solutions. They will price match your current contract by 5%, no poisons. They use humane methods and offer free assessments. You may have heard the news regarding the recent deaths of owls in our urban green space in Saanich due to anticoagulant rodenticide poisoning. Necropsies of these owls revealed the presence of several different commercial compounds. This discovery has raised serious concerns in our community and a demand for change in policies that continue to allow these products. As the individual who initially discovered one of the poisoned owls, I have been determined to learn more about anticoagulant rodenticides and potential solutions. That said, I have done extensive research over the last year now, and I'm deeply concerned about the negative impacts these products have on our ecosystem, human health, wildlife, and domestic pets. The more I uncovered, the more distressing it was for me. Holding the dead owls in my arms has had a profound effect on me. I made a promise to the owl, which is a symbol of wisdom in our community, that I will do whatever I can to prevent more poisonings. I have dropped everything and I'm dedicated to create awareness and make changes. When asked, what do I do about my big rat problem if they ban rodenticides, I respond with, if you currently use rodenticides and you still have a big rat problem, then what you are doing is not working. One owl eats 1,000 rats a year. The 3 owls killed in our neighborhood would have eaten 3,000 rats in a year. Now they are gone.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Okay, Mr. Vanzanella, you're up next. If you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. I'm new to this. Rob Vanzella, 1870 Kings Road. I'm a member of Kings Community Nature Space and member of Owl Watch BC. This is regarding Agenda 15.3. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As other speakers have talked or will talk about the risk anticoagulant rodenticides have on secondary poisonings and to our environment, I would like to touch base on the misinformation or misconception people have about anticoagulant rodenticides, and I will refer to that as ARs. The majority of people I have talked to about ARs have little knowledge of the risk ARs have to our environment. They have been told or have read that ARs pose little risk to nature and to our environment. They state they have heard that the raptor must consume a large quantity of poison prey to have any ill effect on them. In actual fact, the rodent will eat a lethal dose with its first feeding, but doesn't die right away and will feed for several days before he either goes back to the den to die or wanders out of its den in a lethargic state, and then will be easy prey for a predator. That includes owls, hawks, crows, raccoons, dogs, and cats, and etc. During the time of the poisonings, rats understand something's wrong, will populate as much as they can to produce more offspring. So in actual fact, ARs makes matters worse in the long run by increasing rat population. We need to inform people in some way to help them learn to understand that these ARs are a high risk for our environment, and to inform them there are other alternatives that are less invasive to our environment. We need to start with the removal of their food source, such as lids on garbage cans, eliminating entry points. And if there still remains a problem, to use low-risk alternatives such as snap traps, CO2 traps, or companies that humanely deal with and eliminate the problem without using ARs. Therefore, I hope District of Sooke will take steps as other jurisdictions have in banning the use of ARs and having the mayor write to the province for a province-wide ban of ARs. Thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Unger, you're up next. If you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone. Mr. Unger?
Perhaps we can call again later for Mr. Unger. We'll go to the next speaker.
Okay. I don't believe Mr. Hockenhall has joined the meeting. Mr. Hockenhall, are you there? Okay.
Yeah. Hi, I'm just in support of the Transition Sooke presentation that was given earlier today. I also want to thank all of the people that were talking earlier about the pesticide issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Alcock, you're up next. If you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone.
Hi, thank you for an opportunity. Just a quick comment. Yes, I'm here in support of the Transition Sooke presentation as well. I'm mindful of the recent reports that CRD is way off its targets for reaching any kind of reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, as is Victoria. I remember one of the Victoria councillors mentioned that they felt as though the municipalities have little leverage, very few levers they can pull to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I'm not sure that's entirely true, and I hope Sooke can come up with some innovative ways of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But I think the main priority, given the smoke that's drifting around us for the last 5 days, is making Sooke more resilient. We are going to have fires here. The Pacific Northwest is burning in Washington and Oregon. We are going to have fires. We're going to have fires that are greater than anything that happened in 2017 and 2018. We should be really thinking about how we make our community more resilient and what we're going to do to evacuate people either east or west, or heaven forbid, if both of those roads are blocked, kind of like the California people who tried to holiday around the lakes and reservoirs got cut off. Maybe we need to be evacuated by water. But whatever happens, we are going to have fires here, and Sooke should really be thinking about how we're going to be resilient and how we're going to get citizens out of here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Elcock.
Thank you. Ms. Poser, you're up next. If you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone.
I know I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Phillip, you're up next. I'd like to turn on your camera and unmute your microphone.
Ms. Frederica Philippe?
They're both on. Ms. Phillip, did you have anything to add? Your microphone is currently muted.
Yes. I just wanted to report the Transition Sooke presentation. And I want to be sure that because we are building a lot of homes, and I think we should definitely use the passive house criteria as much as possible, which reduce the energy load that the house uses.
Thank you, Ms. Philippe.
Okay, and Mr. Philippe, you're up next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, I am here as well to support the Transition Town presentation. I'm very disappointed in what is happening provincially with the lack of concern for doing anything regarding climate change. And I would say the same thing about our federal government. Very little is happening. We're way behind the other developed powers, have the highest emission rate per capita in the world. And since our provincial and federal governments have a very poor record, I'm hoping that our municipal record will be more positive. As Frederica suggested, I think that anything that we can do to encourage passive home certification would be a very positive development, because it is probably the most advanced form of building houses which will help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I'd like to see more bicycle lanes and free public transportation in our area. Several European countries have made public transportation completely free within municipal boundaries and within their areas, and I think we should start to try and catch up in Canada. I'd like to see fast food outlets discouraged in the future plan. One Tim Hortons steak sandwich produces as many greenhouse gases as a Honda Civic produces over 50 kilometers. And I'd also like to see, in the same vein, a public campaign to try and discourage the consumption of red meat, since 14% of greenhouse gases are produced by red meat and beef is responsible for 9%. I would like, as the Transition Town presentation suggested, see lower population growth targets. And I'd also like to see much more care given to the protection of ecosystems in Sooke, since we're blowing parts of the town to smithereens, which is the extreme opposite to the protection of ecosystems. So once again, I fully support the transition town recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Philippe.
Yes?
I said thank you. Thank you for presenting.
Okay, our next speaker is Paulina Nalega. I'm not sure, oh, there you are. If you want to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'm here to voice my support for transition Sooke presentation, and particularly encouraging the net zero growth. The developments that are going on right now in Sooke are extraordinary, and as the previous speaker mentioned, blasting hillsides to smithereens, it's not sustainable. And also would like to underscore the need to include climate change in the OCP. There's nothing more important, and to have it not highlighted and called out is, it's just not okay at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for presenting tonight.
Okay, our next speaker is Priska Stabel. I don't see them as a participant, so our next speaker is Rainer Anderson. Also don't see them in the meeting. Lynn and or Chris Moss, I have you as the next speaker. If you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone. There you are. They are.
So calling for Lynn or Chris Moss or Mose?
The next speaker I've registered is Christina Schlattner. Ms. Schlattner, can you hear me? All right. Joe Phillips, I don't think I saw them join the meeting.
Christina Schlattner says she's having trouble unmuting.
Nope, I don't have that control. No, you can't unmute. You can only mute. Oh, we've got a couple more. We'll come back and try those ones again. Susan Clark.
Hello, I'm on.
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. I suggest that possibly people had trouble getting on technically. I needed a little bit of technical assistance myself to get on, so that's probably part of the growing pains of this new system. Anyway, I'm here. Susan Clark at 2119 Malrick Place, and I'm happy to address Mayor and Council in support of 8.1, the transition Sooke presentation. I just want to emphasize the critical timing of the presentation. As you're aware, the OCP consultant dialogue is preparing to roll out its public engagement this fall. And it intends to form a vision from the feedback that it gets. So in order to direct dialogue to prompt consideration of climate emissions in every aspect of community life, I would think that some direction would have to come before they've spent any more money developing their instrument. I noticed that you were going to pass this on to the committee, the OCP committee, and I'm just wondering, is that committee supposed to decide to direct dialogue? And if they're the ones to make that decision, how are they going to will they make that decision by consensus, or what is the process? And when would that decision be made? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Victoria Van Rosebrook. If you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute your microphone. Victoria, were you wanting to speak?
Sorry, here I am. Hi,
Great,
thanks.
thank you.
Everyone, council members included, and for allowing us to have the opportunity to support the Sooke transition presentation. As we learned from the pandemic and are still learning that we're kind of victims to who knows what can happen, as California and Washington are learning right now with the fires. I think it's just really important to protect our communities in the best way we can, with a focus on the future, so that we don't end up sitting ducks. I love the zero growth idea, and also hope that potentially the parks in our surrounding areas could potentially have a max limit of humans, as we tend to be quite destructive in mass numbers in these beautiful spots as well. I appreciate the time that you guys spend on these issues, and hope that you keep our opinions and our best interests in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Van Rosebrook.
Okay, I will go back and ask if Mr. Unger is still available to speak.
Hi, can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Steve and Finn Unger, 6698 Helgeson Road. We want to talk to the tree protection bylaw.
Mayor and Council, trees are important. They give life to all kinds of things, including us. Trees give us oxygen for free. They store carbon. They protect us from landslides, flooding, fires, soil erosion, wind, and more, all of which could be extremely devastating or even deadly to humans. Trees provide vital and indispensable habitat for the world's wildlife. Trees conserve water and encourage biodiversity, and so much more. In Sooke, we are blessed to have as many trees as we do, and we need them all. We live right on the interface, at a place where urban meets wild, where people meet animals, and even every year there are casualties of this fact. Every year, wild animals are killed because they threaten or infringe on humans. At the core of this issue, say scientists, is the fact that wildlife is increasingly losing their habitat and are forced to venture out of their wild spaces and into towns and neighborhoods and cities, putting humans and wildlife at risk. The simple solution to this ever-mounting problem is to protect and preserve the rivers, mountains, valleys, and trees that make up the wildlife's habitat. So, we need more trees. Trees also help to stabilize the land, which makes us safer. Their roots reach down into the ground and soil, acting as massive natural screws, holding the ground firm. Also, their crowns and leaves slow the falling rain so that it doesn't pound the earth and erode the ground and soil. Instead, the trees soften the rain, allowing it to seep into the earth, giving water to the forest. So again, we need more trees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Unger. It's nice to see you again, even though it's through Teams.
Nice to see you too.
Okay, thank you very much. Lynn and Chris Moss have just indicated that they were in support of the Transition Sooke presentation, so asked me to pass that along to you. And I believe we have Ms. Schlattner now available. Go ahead and turn it over to her.
Hello, Your Worship and Councillors. I'm sorry I can't turn my camera on, but I hope you can hear my voice.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I'm just speaking to support the Transition Sooke request to have climate emergency as an overarching lens for the official community plan. I believe that it's very important. The second goal of Sooke Council strategic plan is to demonstrate climate leadership. So it's clearly an important goal for Sooke and for Council, and Council has declared a climate emergency. So I don't believe we can leave it to chance to have climate emergency adequately addressed in the official community plan. I believe it must be explicit, and I would like to request a support for the Transition Sooke support of that motion. And I thank you for your opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schlattner.
Okay, thank you. I have one more speaker, and that is Mr. Dolan.
Thank you very much. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I just want to I'm involved with Transition Sooke and part of the climate change and official community plan team. And so I support and have been working with Susan Belford, who gave that great presentation tonight. I just want to sort of tie on to the back of what Susan Clark had to say, which is that clearly in this presentation there is an ask, and it's an ask of Council. If Council wants to ask the advisory committee to Council on climate change what they think, that's great, but the ask needs to happen pretty quickly because we're asking for something to be changed around, and something that's extremely important to the Sooke community. So I just want to reiterate those points. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan.
Okay, that is it for the list of speakers that have joined the meeting.
Okay, so that's it for everyone that's joined. Perhaps what I'll do is our chair or our council liaison that we have appointed to the OCP committee would like the opportunity to just address some of the speakers who were here with us on Teams. So I'll turn to Councillor Beddoes, please.
Yeah, sure. Just on that one comment, how the committee will go about making their decisions, and we will liaison with the consultants for sure. And it is done through consensus. And you know, like tonight, and you have lots of opportunities, the community, to come to us with climate change concerns. We're not deaf to it, but the committee is struck at this particular moment. And when the committee meets, the committee may ask that you do a presentation to them. But again, I can't commit to that till we have a consensus of the committee. But I do thank you for your presentation, and we will take it from here. Thank you.
And to add, the OCP committee meetings are open to the public. They will likely be in a virtual format, and there's plenty of times where there will be engagement on that matter. I just want to, part of what we were also doing was reading the correspondence that came in so that it's properly read out through the record. So I'm just going to go through the remaining correspondence that we have received. The first one is from Bonnie and Michael Ferris. So could another member of council time me, please? I committed to reading the first 2 minutes of every correspondence piece out, so it's just easier if someone else times while I do this. Dear Mayor and Council, my husband and I are new landowners in Sooke, having moved recently from our home in Metchosin. We strongly support Transition Sooke's recommendation that Sooke's OCP be revisited through a climate change emergency lens. As the overarching framework that guides the district of Sooke, it is imperative that the OCP reflects the times that we are living in and that we will be dealing with in the future. Every action needs to pass through this lens prior to it being adopted. A healthy, vibrant community is only as healthy as its people and its environment, and whatever development occurs need to be done in a manner that respects the natural beauty that makes this place so special. Mountains, forests, and waterways should not be compromised for the almighty dollar. They are worth far more than any money can buy. Please accept Transition Sooke's recommendation and ensure that Sooke's OCP is reworked to respect the environment and foster good stewardship. Thank you from Bonnie and Michael Ferris. Thank you very much. And for this writer and all the correspondence, we firmly believe that as well. And we'll be doing our utmost going forward. Our next one is from Bree Keene. Dear Mayor Tate and Council, I am writing in support of an agenda item 15.3 regarding banning anticoagulants rodenticides. Did you know that rat poison, otherwise known as rodenticide, can cause profuse bleeding, hemorrhage, and even death in owls? When owls consume poisoned rats, they experience secondary poison. Not only do these treacherous birds suffer, owls' innate ability to mitigate rodent numbers dwindles. A single owl eats around 3 rats per night or 1,000 rats per year. Therefore, any rat mitigation strategy that simultaneously reduces the owl population works counterproductively. Rat poison spreads through the food web from prey to predator, and as a result, owls are perishing around the province and the nation due to secondary poisoning from highly toxic second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides, in addition, SGARs, in addition to owls. A wealth of studies evidence the Sorry, I'm having some challenges here. These are great. Throughout the food web, affecting other wildlife and raptor populations. Examples include owls, hawks, small birds, earthworms, coyotes, and cougars. There are many reports of poisoned cats and dogs, some tragically ending in neurological damage and death. It is not uncommon for children to be poisoned as well. The rodenticides are ineffective and unsustainable. Rats have a gene in their DNA that enables them to become rodenticide resistant. In response to poison, rats reproduce faster to compensate for thinning numbers. Finding a method that is humane as well as safe for pets and wildlife is important. Humane standards for rat control do not include glutras poison or other home remedies. Whether set up by yourself or a professional, a spring trap is the most humane and safe option, but it is very important to ensure that wildlife, pets, and people are not inadvertently snapped. Tubing, lockbox, confined spaces, and other methods are available. The District of North Vancouver did an extensive investigative report on the subject of secondary poisoning of wildlife. Okay, thank you. Yes. Yeah. I ruled at the start that we were going to go through all the public, so
Did we vote on it? Because it has to be voted on.
I made that ruling as chair, so that would have been the time to challenge me on this. So we're down to one. We're down to Mr. Unger's, which was read.
So that's not in the bylaw that you can make the ruling as the chair, though.
Well, we talked about it and we're here now. So there's one more piece of correspondence.
Okay, well, just so you know, you're working against our very own bylaw.
Yeah, that's why I said at the beginning that we would hear from all the speakers that had registered tonight.
That's not.
Okay, so on to our last one is from Mary Cole. Mayor Tate and councillors writing in support of a tree protection bylaw and to respectfully request that council prioritize the passing of such bylaw with urgency. It is our common interest and for the common good. Trees are ecosystem keystones. They perform vital roles in the continued and managed health and well-being of the natural world around us and upon which our social, economic, and spiritual well-being as human communities depend. Trees sequester max amounts of carbon. They literally vacuum it out of the air, transport it to their roots, and deposit it in the soil where it feeds the microbiome of the rhizosphere and replenishes soil fertility. Trees store vast amounts of water in their roots, trunks, branches, and leaves, and by doing so, they mitigate drought, make the surrounding air humid, and keep environments moist. As a result, healthy trees and intact forests actively contribute to fire management. And trees anchor soil by the network of roots, thereby facilitating the absorption of rainfall, preventing surface flooding and soil erosion. As such, they keep our waterway levels safe and manageable, and water quality clean and healthy for salmon bearing, for wildlife, and human consumption. Once you know all about trees, it becomes easy to justify their protection, and given the current horrific events of climate fires in the Pacific West, tree protection is absolute imperative. The trees standing today are essential to our ability to adapt and survive the climate emergency now and in the future, and the protection of trees is one of those climate solutions whose simplicity is rewarded with far-reaching positive impacts. You might think saving one tree here and there on individual properties around the community is rather small thinking and ineffectual, but it isn't. And that prescribing the removal of a tree with the planting of another is good, it isn't. A meaningful and impactful tree bylaw would apply to trees standing today, and in so doing would cultivate an all-important culture of social responsibility amongst individuals and within our community that would only contribute to the larger goal of strong but sadly as of yet elusive collective action needed to address the challenges that threaten the well-being of our communities, human and ecological. Please prioritize the bylaw, and please do not water it down. Everything promising always seems to get watered down. It's demoralizing and undermines public confidence in our governing institutions.
2 minutes.
Good.
Point of
Thank you.
order, we need to have a vote on this as it's democratic and it's part of
Yeah,
our
so I made the
procedure
ruling as
bylaw.
chair when we started the public input, and that would have been the time to do that, and now we're at the end, and we've made it through all of the public. So going forward, I'll remind council that when I make a ruling as chair, is to do it at that time. And I said then that we would hear from all registered speakers and read out the materials. So that was the opportunity that members of council had.
And you didn't make it
So
clear,
now
but
we're
thanks for
going on in our
clarifying now.
agenda here, and which one? He spoke to us. Okay. Okay, so this one, this is a different letter here. Okay. So would you kindly, this is from Steve Unger, would you kindly include this letter in the agenda? Have you ever been in a flash flood? I have. Floods in a desert seem impossible, yet they happen. How could a dry riverbed fill so fast that it washes people away? You see, there's no soil, no vegetation, no trees to slow, absorb, and buffer the water flow. All the rain races down the land, stripping whatever soil is left, creating hardpan. There is nothing to slow the water stripping the land of life until nothing is left. We are starting to see this process on our farm in Sooke. Both the Momule Creek and Helgeson Creek flow through our property, and we are downstream from Broom Hill. During the 9 years we've been here, we have seen more and more intense water flow across our property, and it's not that there is more annual rain, it's that all the water comes faster and in a shorter period. The intense water flow washes the topsoil off our fields into the creek. And last year we brought in an excavator to dig drainage ditches in a field to direct the water. Our road into the farm is washed out every year, requires costly and time-consuming repairs, making it harder to farm. Each year that there are one or more floods of Demomule Creek, making spawning harder for the salmon. We see the salmon washed into the field, and this did not happen 9 years ago. This is because our neighbors are cutting down their trees. The only difference between a forest and a desert is trees. Sooke is slowly deforesting itself. This is providing short-term jobs and profit for developers, but what happens when all the trees are gone? What will it be like to live in Sooke then? Sooke's motto, where the rainforest meets the sea. For there is to be a rainforest, there needs to be trees. Each human requires 4 mature trees to provide their oxygen. What happens if we clear cut? Where does our breathable clean air come from? Quite simply, trees equal life. Protecting the trees is not a nice to have or an amenity consideration. We should not need a bylaw to protect them. Trees are an ecological imperative. Here in the rainforest, tree protection is environmental protection. Protecting trees and thereby the environment and the humans should not be an addendum to the OCP. It should be the OCP. My request of council is they prioritize the tree bylaw. Do not water down the bylaw, but use it to protect our trees and forests. Only allow sustainable forestry to be practiced in Sooke. Sooke's future depends on trees. Thank you. Okay, so that's it. Okay, thank you, everyone. So moving on in tonight's agenda brings us to our consent agenda. And here we have that items 11.1, 11.2, and 11.3 and 11.4 be adopted by general consent. Moved by Councillor Beto, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Anything, no one's attracting, all those in favor? Opposed, that's carried unanimously. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So reports to 12.1. First off is the development permit for 2096 Church Road.
Thank you and good evening, Council. I'll just begin sharing my screen here. There we go. All right. The purpose of this report is to request approval from council to issue a development permit application that would permit the development of a one-story commercial building in the town center municipally addressed as 2096 Church Road. The proposed 2,800 square foot building would be the new office for the WorkLink Employment Society, containing office spaces, classroom space, a computer lab, computer resource center, a conference room, washrooms, a waiting area, reception, and some storage area and lunchroom. Subject area is about a half acre and is located on the east side of Church Road, south of the Knox Church and Knox Church mixed-use building. To the east and west of the subject property are single-family residence zone R1 along Anna Marie Road and Church Road. Church Road is an important corridor in Sooke, and this development will be providing a pedestrian-friendly frontage as well as a bus stop, both of which will help set the tone for future redevelopment and support the implementation of initiatives in Sooke's local area transit plan. The property falls within the town center land use designation and is subject to the town center plan and OCP town center design guidelines. This plan on the screen here shows landscaping, frontage improvements, including the bus stop, setbacks from property lines, location of tree protection fencing, as well as parking. As per the arborist report, the building, the parking lot, and proposed fencing are cited to avoid tree root impacts on retained neighboring trees along the north and south property lines. The garbage enclosure shown is temporary to serve phase 1 of the development. A permanent garbage enclosure will be identified as part of phase 2, where a 2 to 3 story residential building is to be considered near the rear of the property, which may also include some institutional, office, or commercial uses. The proposed development has met the zoning bylaw requirements, including landscaping and parking, which also includes the bicycle racks, and the requirements of the CD11 zone. There were no concerns received from the referral process. On this slide here, you can see a close-up of the frontage improvements to be completed south of the entrance into the property. As well, the bus stop design has been confirmed to meet BC Transit specifications. On this slide here is another close-up of the frontage improvements on the northern portion of the entrance. The surface grading and parking will be designed for accessibility. 9 parking stalls are required based on this proposal's floor area, and a total of 14 stalls have been provided, including 2 of them being for disabled stalls. Here's some conceptual renderings for the subject building. The proposed development meets the form and character guidelines in the OCP. Materials shown will achieve the West Coast character required, as well as the pedestrian experience can be improved. The primary entrance is clearly identified, and art will be incorporated onto the street-facing facade with windows on all sides of the building. Staff recommends issuance of this DP with conditions that the applicant enter into a landscape agreement and provide bonding prior to building permit issuance. That frontage improvements are constructed for frontage improvements prior to building permit issuance, or alternatively, the applicant can enter into a works and services agreement. As well, as per the covenant requirement, a bus stop with sign, seating, shelter is also required prior to occupancy issuance. And with that, that concludes my presentation for this development permit proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Paolo, for the presentation and the report. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Bateman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Paolo. Good to have you in the building here in Sooke, and welcome to town. I had a few questions. The buffered sidewalk, you state, is consistent with our subdivision bylaw 404. Is it also consistent with the connector standard that has been identified in the transportation master plan? in the draft version of the Transportation Master Plan.
Yes, I believe based on these standards, those are the continued standards moving forward. However, I'll defer to the Director of Operations if there's any further details based on that standard.
Sorry, just had to unmute myself there. It will be incorporated into the new design standards that'll be included in the Transportation Master Plan. Further, when the district does take funds forward, potentially next year for council's consideration to incorporate design of the transportation corridor on Church Road, we will ensure that these design standards are tied into the new cross sections in the Transportation Master Plan.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious about, this will be a sheltered bus stop. That is correct, I believe?
That's correct.
Yes, okay. I was concerned about parking for we have 14 spaces, which are 5 more than are required. However, there is a future mixed-use building on site. Will there be additional parking for that building?
I can't answer for certain at this time based on the proposal that would be coming forward as part of phase 2. In still determining whether that's a 2 or 3-story building and the office space and whatnot. We'll have to further discuss with the applicant how parking would be accommodated and whether, as part of the phase 2 application, if any variance requirements would need to be considered by council.
Thank you. Small question, will the bike racks be sheltered? Because we have heard through some earlier delegations to council that sheltered bike racks, such as the wonderful new one at Sea Park, are very handy here in this rainy climate.
Based on the conceptual, I have not noted any sheltering being provided over the bike racks. It would just likely be the standard ring formation, providing those 6 locking spaces.
Yeah, this is a wonderful proposal, and perhaps in future this sort of issue can be raised with applicants regarding bike rack shelters. I found, given tonight's theme about trees, it was interesting the line in the report that states it is unfortunate that all trees on site were removed. Could you explain that statement a little further for us, please?
Certainly. Just as part of the proposal and looking at the current vacancy of the property right now, that there aren't any existing buildings, just working with the site and trying to fit in this proposal, the idea was to allow for as many existing trees on the property and any roots from neighboring property trees to be protected as best as possible. But that, had there been an alternative situation where there was more trees on the property, the proposal would have to take into consideration how those trees could have been potentially built into this proposal's site plan layout.
Okay, interesting. Given that many municipal, or at least some municipal tree bylaws that I've looked at have a provision that you cannot remove trees until the development permit is approved on any development site. And finally on that subject, on page 67, we do see the arborist's layout, seeing that there were approximately 27 trees on the property. I'm curious if you can just explain the numbering around each one of these trees. That's on page 67 of the agenda package. And we see the name of the tree, and then there's a measurement. There's 2 measurements. One seems to potentially be the elevation of the property, and the other, is that the diameter at breast height?
I do believe that you're correct, the elevation points and then the diameter of the species of tree that's being noted on the sketch.
Yeah. So that's the green lettering, is the diameter next to the name of the tree?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor St. Pierre, then McMath?
Just curious about the single story. Given that the applicant has an appetite, seems in the future, to put a 3 to 4 story, I was just wondering why they hadn't immediately gone to something higher with, more space. Is it because of the parking issues around square footage, or? Then I have another question after that, if you don't mind.
I just believe it's a development proposal based on the needs of what the applicant was putting forward, and certainly one of the considerations. I can't speak to the specifics of the applicant's decision making, but that would have been something staff would have to take into consideration with floor area. That additional parking may have been another requirement for that site. So they based this proposal on a one-story building specifically for this use, with future consideration for a potential 2 to 3 story in a future phase.
Right, and of course, at this point in time, we don't have any bylaws or anything that would insist that any sort of development in the town center be more than 1 story, so we don't have that option. My other question was, in terms of EV charging, do we have any options in terms of encouraging that on site? There's going to be a fair amount of traffic in and out with with the WorkLink programs going on. Just curious if that's possible. People are likely to be there for an hour or two. Seems like a good site.
Mm-hmm. Not specifically as a mandated requirement, but certainly something that the applicant may consider on a voluntary basis to provide that type of charging. But moving forward, that may be something that arises out of future planning processes in requiring specific locations throughout the town center to provide for those types of charging stations incorporated into future developments.
Thank you very much.
Councillor McMath?
Make the motion that council approve the issuance of the development permit PLN 01510 for the purposes of constructing a commercial building for the subject property municipally addressed 2096 Church Road.
Okay, so that's moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Just a question or more of a comment from myself to staff. I'm in support of the development permit, and I'm glad to hear that there is consideration given for higher density on the remaining lot. Just given this proximity to transit, the town center, and other amenities, it seems appropriate to me that there be more than just a single level building on this site. So I get that there's planning in the works for the next phase, and I would just urge staff to obtain higher density on the remainder of this lot. There was a building there, I think the building that was there was more than 1 story, so now we're seeing it replaced with just a single-story building. So I think going forward, its location, we just need more, but I'm glad to hear that that's in the plans. Okay, anything further on the motion? Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the proposal as well. The only question I have is the way the building is situated on the lot. I mean, from Church Road, mostly what you will see is parking lot. If the building were rotated 90 degrees and the parking situated behind the building, it would be more aesthetically pleasing from the road.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Our next item up is 12.2, Demonmiel Creek Little River Pedestrian Crossing.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just share my screen here with you guys.
Mr. Carter, Laura Hooper is requesting control. Would you like me to turn it over to her?
Yes, you could. I had just a quick little report, but if she would like to speak to it, I can let you pass it over to her.
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, could you confirm if my screen's being shared?
No, it is not.
No, I'm having issues with it right now.
No, hang on one sec. Try again. Go ahead.
So is it being shared now?
Not yet.
No, I can't get it.
Oh, no.
To the rescue.
Oh, sorry, I can go ahead and operate the presentation for you. Just want to tell me.
My apologies. I could speak to it without the presentation. So essentially, staff is bringing forward the consideration to support a grant application for the Demamiel Creek Pedestrian Crossing Project. This will be phase 2 of the project that builds on phase 1, which was the Demamiel Creek Connector. Going forward, this project will consist of 400 meters of new trail, 40 meters of boardwalk, a 40-meter bridge crossing, and it will improve 180 meters of existing trail. Some essential project justification would be that it is providing excellent connection and essential connection from Sun Rivers to the town center. It will support active transportation initiatives, and it is identified in the draft Parks and Trail Master Plan. It will also align with the pedestrian connectivity that's identified in the draft Transportation Master Plan. The crossing project is identified in our 5-year financial plan. Feasibility studies have been completed, and it's currently at a 50% design stage. Ms. Hooper is actively working on value engineering processes in order to identify any additional future cost savings when we could go into final design. We're looking at a total project cost of about $2,290,000, and tonight we're asking council consideration to proceed with the grant application with a district contribution of $610,743. We will be taking full advantage to capture a grant opportunity of approximately $1.7 million. And we leave council with the following recommendation for consideration.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions that I have. One of them is through the design or consultation with the schools. I'd spent some time at both the Kolpoya and at Journey, and there is a big effort to have our kids do more outdoor activities, and they spend a lot of time in this area. So one of the discussions was that the boardwalk would be wide enough to include or the setup of an outdoor classroom so that students can safely travel down into the area, and it can be used for more than just a connection, but to actually learn about the history, the ecology, the First Nation context and the like in that area. So has that been considered at this point, or is it early for that?
Ms. Hooper, could you speak to that?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, that's a great question. It is something that is part of the design, and it's also considered a value added for the grant application because it supports students but also has a tourism component.
Thank you. The other question is in regards to the Investment in Canada infrastructure program, the grant opportunity. I'm glad that staff that has identified this grant and is getting ready for it. So of course I support us applying for it. I just know that pretty much every other local government, including the Capital Regional District and others, are also submitting for this program. And in years past, it's heavily oversubscribed. So as other grant opportunities open up, or should we hear the announcement of, I'm hoping that we also pursue those opportunities if those other or potential future grant opportunities allow us to, because in the case of ISIP the last time, it took nearly 2 years for the federal government to turn around and notify recipients of success. This is a real priority project, so I just would want us to actively pursue any type of funding opportunity that came available and not just be holding out and waiting all the time. So I'm wondering if there's any feedback. Can you apply for others while you have one open? Or do you see that when grant opportunities come about? If we're successful, we could withdraw from this.
Yes, Your Worship, to speak to that, I believe that we can apply for any active grant opportunities that will be coming up. Mr. McInnes, did you have anything to add to that?
No, it was Your Worship, a priority that we get projects such as this one shovel-ready, shovel-worthy, and that means having the design at a degree where the criteria for grant programs are easily articulated. So this project in particular will be well suited for grant opportunities as they come up, and we certainly will try and match this opportunity with the best grant opportunities that are out there. And the ISIP seems to be the preferred one at the moment, but I understand your comments about the time that we've waited for the current one. The fact that we just got money through Build Canada may have an impact on our success with this one. The fact of the matter is, a project of this nature, if there's not some grant component, it would be very difficult for us to fund it. So we'll do our best to continue to source money through grants and other opportunities that may come along.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Logans, then St. Pierre, then McMath.
Thank you. Thanks, Steph, for the presentation. I'm obviously really excited for this project, and I love that this is a great connection, but I'm also aware of the environmental impact it will have. I'm hoping that we can look a bit more into the idea of having it as a tourism destination and a classroom, because I know that there are local residents such as the Ungers that have gathered a lot of information on this area and researched the wildlife in this area extensively, and know that even just having the foot traffic heading through here between Sun River and the school will impact the environment and the animals in that area. So it would be nice to have an impact assessment of some kind, even if it's just connecting with the local residents to see what impact tourism and classrooms might have before we start adding that to grant application.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor McMath, and through your worship
That was
to
Councillor
Councillor
Logans.
McMath, we will consider these things in the valued engineering design process. Ms. Hooper will be in contact with different groups, and we definitely will look for opportunities to minimize impact to the trees in this crossing and improve the slope stability where we can, and keep the existing ground as it is if we can in all cases.
Thank you, and it's actually more about the wildlife rather than the trees in this area.
Excellent. We'll have Ms. Hooper consider that when she's in the process of value engineering on this design.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I appreciated the report, and especially mention of staff is working to reduce costs by modifying the design while still achieving the goals of the project. I'm curious mostly about BC bids, and I'm curious about all the different other projects that are likely to be looking at similar types of infrastructure. And my understanding is that you may have competition from, or a lack of competition from various contractors, and I'm curious as to whether or not we have any means of actually addressing that, and whether or not we can actually use local contractors for any part of the project as much as possible in order to avoid those sorts of issues.
We would definitely through your worship, we'd definitely like to utilize local contractors through the construction process of this. However, policy will encourage us and guide us to go out to the bidding process through BC bid. And we want to be careful about not pulling the project apart and splitting projects to avoid procurement and tendering law.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'm curious about the depth of that ravine leading down to Dimma Creek. I was mucking around there during the summer and tried to get down there, but it's quite a very steep route. So will we be seeing a zigzag walkway, much as we have at Ed McGregor Park?
Through your worship, I believe we will. Ms. Hooper, could you speak to that at all in terms of the details?
Yes, through your worship. The trail will follow, we expect, an existing logging road that winds its way through 2 switchbacks down to the bottom of the ravine. I don't know the exact details for the elevation of that ravine, but know that by following the existing alignment, we're going to be minimizing our use of retaining walls and therefore minimizing the need to cut any trees down while we're doing it.
And I just wanted to point out my memory of when this project first came up, maybe back in 2017, there was quite a bit of discussion around, as Councillor Logan states, wildlife corridors and potential bear conflict with pedestrians. So it'd be worthwhile to go back and have a look at that discussion back then. Thank you.
Councillor Beddoes?
Maybe it's obvious to other people. Where's the $610,000 come from? What purse does that come from?
Ms. Gray, could you speak to that?
Yes, through your worship. There, as indicated in the report, there's multiple funding sources. It's over the years 2021 and 2022 in the capital financial plan. And so there is, it's coming from a combination of taxation, casino, our GST credit, and gas tax funds. So as kind of what happens every year is we were going to review this, and of course there's a concern about casino funds. But if council, adopts this resolution, endorses this, we'll definitely need to be including this in the budget. So this would be the priority item, and funding would be determined once we know all the other requests per council and staff for capital projects for 2021 and beyond.
Well, thank you for that, but I guess the takeaway I get is we're not entirely clear at this point in time where that money's going to come from. It could come back on the taxpayer. Is that correct? I mean, rather than, the gas tax, casino, which is going to be dreadful for this next year. So it's okay. I'll leave it up to, if council passes that, then it's your job to come up with the money. But I am concerned about the implications to the taxpayer over the next 2 years, considering what we're dealing with in this day and age. So, but thank you for, I don't have that in front of me, so I couldn't consult that. Thank you.
Yeah, and through your worship, it's definitely a focus for all staff this year of 2021. The next 5-year financial plan is going to be looked at very, very closely, because we know that future increases are not going to be widely accepted. So it definitely will be a balancing game for 2021's budget. So, this will definitely be considered. I know it's a priority. So if council approves submitting this grant application, then this will be required to be included in there. So we will find the funds for it and present that to council with the budget presentations.
Just a comment to Councillor Bateman when you asked about the egress and such. There was, through the community consultation that occurred, there was a desire to have an accessible routing, so that required a longer loop in order to make the grade, so that it's not, so that everyone could access the trail system. I've not gone down on the Poye side, but I have through the Sun River side, and it's quite lovely. There's just, you just hit a point where you're at the creek, but there's 2 different sort of existing trails that go into this area. I'm fully aware of the wildlife impact, but there's a lot of people in there in an uncontrolled way, because the paths, you'd follow the trail and see where it goes. And so this is an opportunity to generate more awareness and to have safer and more access along the route. Councillor St. Pierre?
I'd like to move that council direct staff to submit an application for grant funding for the Demamiel Creek Little River pedestrian crossing through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, British Columbia Community Culture and Recreation, and that council support the project and commits to its share $610 and $743 on the project.
So it's moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Logans. Anything further on the recommendation or on the motion? Nope. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Great, thank you very much for the presentation, and wish us luck on this one. Okay, item 12.3, please, our draft council parental leave policy. So this is a recommendation from our committee of the whole that's here. I'm just going to pull this up here. And so that's here. The recommendation is that council adopt policy C0006, council parental leave. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Anything further on the policy? So we wish you the very best in that endeavor. Okay. Everyone else? I'm not going to say. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. That's great. Thank you. Okay, bylaws. Item 13.1 is a zoning amendment bylaw for 2084 Ludlow Road. Over to staff, please.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen here. All right, the applicant has applied for rezoning of their 1 1/4 acre property from rural residential RU4 to neighborhood rural residential RU5 for the purposes of creating one new lot that'll be approximately 2,500 square meters in size. Subject property is designated gateway residential in the official community plan with the intent of preserving the rural character of the area through low density development. The proposed zoning amendment meets the objectives of the gateway residential designation and will provide, low density infill while preserving the rural character of the surrounding neighborhood. The new lot is proposed to provide a home for a family member of the owner's family. Based on the applicant's proposal, should rezoning be successful, a development permit would not be required as the proposed subdivision is to create fewer than 4 lots. These are site pictures from the property. Land's relatively flat with no environmentally sensitive areas on site, and rural residential is the predominant land use within the surrounding area. No objections or concerns were received from referral agencies, and the application meets the requirements of the District of Sooke policies and bylaws, and staff is in support of first and second reading as per the attached bylaw and moving forward to setting a public hearing date. With that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for discussion. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'd like to move that council give first and second reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 790, 600-79, 2020, to amend the zoning on the property located at 2084 Ludlow Road from rural residential RU4 to neighborhood rural residential RU5, and that council schedule the public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 790, 600-79, 2020 in accordance with section 466 of the Local Government Act.
So it's moved and seconded. Can these be moved together? Okay. Anything on the motion? Anything further, Councillor Bateman?
Well, I guess my one question regards the affordable housing policy and whether that does indeed apply to, and I acknowledge I'm unclear on the affordable housing policy, even now, 18 months into my tenure. Does it apply also just to a simple subdivision of a property into 2 lots?
Correct. Yeah, it's not defined in the policies, and in the report we just indicated a comparison with the city of Langford, and then based on past proposals, what was provided. However, that was an example based on 5 or more lots being provided. So. Not so much a comparable that we could provide specifically for this one new parcel that's proposed to be created.
Councillor Logans, anything? No? Okay. Councillor St. Pierre?
I had also had a question about the affordable housing component. It was mostly because we keep on rehashing this because we don't seem to have a lot of clarity. And I'm hoping at some point that we could have something with more clarity come forward. So just a question to staff, is that in the pipe somewhere along the lines? What would that look like? Because that 10% continues to be baffling and a little bit scary to developers, to homeowners, to anybody who wants to do anything. And we'd also like to have something halfway decent coming into affordable housing. So just like to know if we're going to move forward on that and when that might happen.
Yes, that would certainly be, as part of the OCP review, we're going to be looking at strategies for affordable housing and looking at crafting policy direction within the document itself. And then ultimately a defined policy that talks about dollar amounts and the criteria specifically when we would be applying that type of policy to these types of subdivision proposals. So it would be likely forthcoming following the OCP review.
Thank you.
Okay, anything further? Okay, I'll call a question then. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 14 is new business item. This is a notice of motion from Councillor St. Pierre. So this was read out or introduced or provided in writing at our last one. So Councillor St. Pierre, if you would like to read it now, and then we'll look for a seconder. Turn on your microphone.
So this is the council directs staff to explore options to make council correspondence more readily available to the public.
Okay, so seconded by Councillor Bateman, and go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre, to motivate.
Okay, so the main issue here is simply that in terms of the agenda at this point in time, the only thing that the public has access to is a list of our correspondence without having access to the actual body of the correspondence. So there's no actual way, transparency-wise, for the public to know what council has or has not received. This is, this doesn't seem to be quite what we had in the past, when of course we had the entire body of our correspondence as a part of the agenda. And I understand that that's a little bit cumbersome, but I would like to see if we can explore options to make that material available to the public in its entirety.
Councillor St. Oh, can I go to Councillor McMath? Okay, I'll go to Ms. Machada, then, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, so when the agenda gets published, we have the entire list of all correspondence that has been published with the topic indicated, and we do make that available to the public almost immediately upon request. And we have been doing that since this new process has been in place. We do get some people that do request copies of certain correspondence, and I would say we generally provide it with either almost immediately, or if there is some severing of information, probably within an hour.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
Just in quick response, I just think that that adds an extra layer of complexity when it's often really hard for people just to deal with the complexity of dealing with the district. If people can actually just access it online easily enough, and it should be possible, I'm guessing, to make this available somehow. You guys have performed miracles so far. I'm just going to say it should be possible. Then we don't have to wait for requests. We don't have to answer requests. The material is just available. And that certainly would be my preference.
Through your worship, just as a note, granted, there's been several weeks of correspondence that needed to be put together for the agenda today, but it did take approximately 4 hours to go through, sort, and sever all of the information that was required to add that to the agenda today. So it is an extra resource that we can certainly go back to doing that if that's the wish of council.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman, then McMath.
So just to clarify that last statement through you to Ms. Musada, 4 hours to pull correspondence from the documents that are circulated to us as a council and pop them into this package?
That's correct, because they need to go through, we need to go through each piece. It does
redact and that sort of thing.
Yeah, to redact, and then it does add a little bit that they are pulled, but we still would have to go through all of that correspondence to ensure that any private information is severed.
Okay. So my comment is that we seem to be moving towards a hybrid solution, and I think that adding the list of correspondence, as we did last year on my motion on this subject, is a good idea. We have tonight 37 letters were received from July 31st to September 9th. I think if it doesn't take, I don't know if you have to redact or alter the weekly correspondence packages that we receive to be able to pop them up online at the time you post a council agenda, so that, we're doing a good job tonight of pulling correspondence for discussion later tonight. However, would that be a relatively easy task?
It would depend on the size of the file that's circulated, but the information would still need to be redacted if it's shared online.
All right.
Councillor McMath?
So we have the lists of emails with the subjects, so it's very clear what they're about. It's not complex for someone to ask for a copy of an email at all. And if they're that passionate about it, it takes 2 seconds. As far as like posting online, that still means that whether it's in our agenda that we receive or not, if it's being posted online, they have to go through every piece of correspondence to make sure that there's no private information that goes out there. So it's actually is a bigger task to them rather than making things more efficient. And again, it goes back to like our original thing with why we were here in the first place. It's all this information, and when you talk about like having it posted for people to have access to, they have access to it. Adding it in there doesn't make things more transparent. It changes nothing about the integrity. It's just about efficiency. And so when Councillor Bateman sometimes brings up, like, we should have all of the correspondence in our packages, we have the option now. Should we choose to, should we feel passionate, should we want to bring something forward, we have that opportunity to do so, and it's not complex at all.
This is your third time speaking. Well, I would just make it quick.
Yes. First of all, I'm looking for a staff report to see how we can actually resolve this. So I'm not looking for a decision from council at this point in time. But in response to Councillor McMath, it's absolutely not clear, from a list of correspondence, what's in the body of the correspondence. And if the public actually wanted to, for example, come before us with some item in the agenda, they can't easily speak to it on the spot. So someone might actually be sitting in chambers. They have no idea what's in our correspondence. They cannot actually speak to it. What we're doing here is, in a time of more challenges for people to actually access council and be a part of this, we're making it more difficult. And that's not what we should be doing. If we're really looking to actually allow for the public to participate, then we need to make it possible for the public to participate, even if it's more efficient and more effective and saves time not to.
Okay, Councillor Logans is a first-time speaker.
Thank you. This has gone back and forth quite a lot, and while I appreciate the desire to have correspondence completely viewable by everyone, our job as council is to pull this stuff forward and make it an item on the agenda. It's not the public's job to view every email that comes to us and then for them to comment on it. So bringing it forward the way we do and making it an item on the agenda then allows them to see what that correspondence is and support or not support that. And it's our job to make that a motion or make it something to move it forward.
Councillor McMath?
And just in regards to your comment about someone coming to a meeting and not knowing about a piece of correspondence, that's just someone that is disorganized and hasn't previewed or requested beforehand when they've had the opportunity. So again, that doesn't justify like additional cumbersome work to staff to provide that option for that.
Sorry, question for myself. So with the members of the public that joined us on Teams today, are they still on Teams now?
When I checked a few moments ago, there were still 4. Most have left the meeting.
Okay. I just raised that because right now we won't have members. We have 1 now. Okay. We don't have members coming into chambers right now, period. And we likely won't for some time to come. In order to prepare for tonight's meeting, because we're trying to provide more access in whatever way we can through Chambers. So we have Teams, we have written, and our staff have even upgraded our telephone so that for those without maybe good broadband, they can phone in and can reach us in that way. So there's a lot of work happening. We have both our corporate officer and our deputy and a clerk here to make this meeting work. I am just not comfortable making a change to a policy that will see more directed to corporate services. We also have committees firing up, two committees kicking up, getting going, another 2 in formation, and we have an uncertain budget planning underway. So while I appreciate the concern that you've raised, I feel that our staff is at capacity. I think that I agree with Councillor Logan's in that we receive the correspondence. It's up to councillors to bring something forward, notice of motion, or if we found a way to pull things for discussion, or they can then, it'll be then up to you to take what you hear from the public and to put a notice of motion and to bring it forward on something to act on. So that's where the role of our staff leave and ours comes in. And then we still are engaging with the public with whatever we can, like when we can have conversations in like coffee shop conversations and those things, as people are more comfortable if they are being out, or also through social media, phone calls and emails. And so I think I appreciate where you're going with this. I'm not in support of it because I think it's just more. And even adding something to the website, we are in the process of revamping the website because even now trying to search things on it is challenging. I just find our website challenging to navigate. So I don't want to say to the public, oh, by the way, the correspondence is on the website, but good luck finding it because we can't find it. And it makes me feel that the website is also at capacity. And as you start to add more, I mean, I love the mapping, the schematics, the digitized imaging and text, all of that just takes up more space, which makes things harder to find. So I feel that we're all doing our best and I'm just comfortable leaving it as it is. And then as we see more about what we need to make improvements on, we can, if it's still an issue in the future, we'll do that. But I just think it's a lot to add right now, given everything that staff are doing. So I'll go to Councillor Beddoes, then to Councillor Logans. Councillor Beddoes.
Well, we originally become full circle again. We originally wanted a lot of this stuff, which I shouldn't use the word crap, but a lot of it was crap. Should have never even come to us. And I just don't see any value of putting that on. We were frustrated this time last year because you have this great big list of stuff. And even like this, some of these letters that we did this time were, to me, computer generated and not legitimate because it didn't have somebody's name and address on. They should have never even be coming to us. But that's for us to vet. And Councillor Logan's, I certainly could agree with her. If there's something there important, then we draw them out. That's what we're paid for. So I would like to see it, for the time being, stay as it is. If it gets to be a problem, we could revisit it. But I think for now, we have enough things to deal with.
Councillor Logans?
I think in terms of a staff report as well, any staff report on this is going to involve time, because this is a weekly or daily task that someone has to do. So unless we're prepared to hear back that we need to hire another staff person as a clerical staff to make this happen, I agree with the mayor that I'm not going to vote for an option that explores adding time onto those who are already worked quite hard during this pandemic.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, okay, so I guess we have 24 letters have been added to tonight's agenda, a total of 4 hours of staff time. There were 37 in the package, so that would take us up to 6 hours. So I totally understand and will recognize that staff time is limited. At the same time, transparency is something that we have made a commitment to. I think to describe any letter we receive as crap is a dangerous piece of language, but I get it.
My apology for that terminology.
But I also understand. I also take a little umbrage with Councillor McMath stating that I'm still seeking to get the full agenda, full correspondence into the agenda. I haven't stated that in at least a year. And, you know, yeah. So I think we need to keep working towards a hybrid solution, and I think our corporate officer is working on a correspondence policy. So this too will be included in it.
Yeah, I think it's more of an operational procedure. I think right now, I think we know that we share it, we know how we treat it, and it's really just an internal policy or a procedure that we're just working on to fine tune, because I think that council is, I received some good feedback on the notes that I add to the correspondence package so that you know how it's been addressed by staff or who's it's been delegated to. If there's anything more than that, I'm welcome to hear any feedback on what can be improved in that process, but that's where we're at.
Sorry, nope, no, you're done. Thank you. That's the procedural bylaw, and I have already been called on it once, so not going to do that again. All right. Okay, so we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. So anything further from someone who has not exceeded their allotted time speaking abilities? Now, otherwise, I will call a question. Yes, that council directs staff to explore options to make council correspondence more readily available to the public. Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we have Councillor St. Pierre in favor and 6 others opposed. The motion's defeated. But thank you for bringing it forward. Okay, so item 15, correspondence requiring action. So the first one is one that I pulled, and it's regarding the FCM Sustainability Communities Conference. Our expense policy only covers the main FCM AGM, which will be virtually held for one day on October 15th. So this is a sustainability one for a fee of $75, and I've never attended this, so I would like to in a virtual way. The fee's been reduced considerably to $75, and it's all online. So I feel odd moving this motion. Okay. Is anyone else interested in attending the virtual? Okay, well, now's your time to say you are, or you need to commit, because there is a deadline and we want to capture the early bird rate. So you would need to decide that today. So it would be myself, Councillor Lajeunesse, Councillor Bateman, and Councillor St. Pierre. I know, so that's, would be $300. And I believe we do have funding in the budget still? Yes.
Through your worship, there's approximately 11,000 left in that fund.
We have around $1,000? $11,000? Wow, okay.
Have to drop somebody off.
Okay, well, we're covered, and it's yeah, that's good news.
The motion is for all 4, I believe.
Yeah, so the 4 of us, so that's moved by Councillor McMath, and Councillor Logans is seconding. Okay, for 4 members of council. Okay, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Next up is 15.2, the Harmony Project, and this is correspondence regarding a drive-in movie. I might have, I don't remember, I have, I think. So here the Harmony Project has, and they're looking to set up a drive-in movie, and of course there's limits on the 50 people and the like, so they're looking at something outdoors, obviously, man, I'm not thinking here, but in John Phillips Memorial Park, and that's where we had it the last time, but it was more of a walk-in scenario. So in this case, I'm not certain if the park can handle you know, we had our movie in the summertime and folks were driving in, but now with the rains, I don't know if that is an appropriate venue. There has been other dialogue in the community about doing something, and places like the high school have come up, or even Evergreen Mall, because then it's a more flat surface, more durable to handling the vehicles. I just don't know about the vehicles in and out of the park with it, because it gets really kind of marshy. I don't know how to describe it, but it gets really,
As a golf course, it's marshy.
yeah, it's just to have it in there, so. So that's my only challenge, is having the vehicles, and it's more suitable in the summertime. Councillor Logans?
I agree. Even in the summertime, it's quite marshy there. I think it would be great if they could connect, although the Harmony Project does operate out of the high school, doesn't it? But it'd be great if they could connect with the EMCS Society, because they may have details on how to do a drive-in movie theater against the gymnasium wall at the high school, and then it's in a parking lot anyhow. I don't know 100% if it's been done before, but it could be an option.
And even if they don't use the wall, like, it would be a good surface for the screen. In terms of a provider, like what I found at the movie that we had last year, the screen was great. It was great. And even with the wind, it didn't cause any visual problems. The sound was, it was the color. Like, the problem I found is that they didn't fix the, it was so dark. It was hard. And at first I thought it was too light out. And then I thought, well, maybe it's just a dark movie and it's just dark. And then it paused, and then they adjusted it, and we'd left at that point, but then I heard it was all fixed and it was fine. And that was a technology glitch with that company. So if we were to use them again, we'd say we need a better break on the rate this time, because of the impact that we had. It just sort of took away from it. It was a great idea though. But I was thinking either the high school would be a great location. I'm not comfortable. It's just the park, right? Councillor Lajeunesse?
What about Sea Park's parking lot?
That would be another one. And yeah, that would be another, is Sea Park as well. Because when they bring in they don't need the building, it's just to have the screen set up in such a way, so that would be another option. Councillor St. Pierre?
I'm not exactly clear on the support they're asking for. I mean, they've bounced a couple of numbers out there, 2,500 and so on. Are they asking us for a contribution to help make this happen? Are they asking for help finding a site the way we're doing right now? I'm just curious.
I'm seeing both. I'm seeing just in feedback on the location, and also potential for the funding of the movie. So what I would do is, because we have time, is something that that council direct staff to recommend the Sooke Harmony Project contact both the EMCS Society and Sea Park to see if either entity would be interested in hosting the movie, and then to report right back to council with a different request. And what I mean by that is that, let's say the MCS Society agrees, then perhaps the location is determined, then maybe we could consider the funding. Or they might want to do something in some way with the students there as a joint fundraiser, something, and Sea Park Commission, same sort of idea. Maybe there's something we can do there. But I just feel that those would be better locations. So, Councillor Beddoes?
I mean, when you look at what they need running water, they need washrooms, a sanitation area, power. We don't have any of that. We have one pit toilet. Yeah. So, I mean, it would not be an ideal location. So, I mean, it was just not even a starter for John Phillips Park. Maybe in the future when there's another building on the park or something that can be used. So I think they better explore other options. Sea Park's an option. Some pretty favorable people on that board that might be looking for it. But this is just a no-go.
Yeah. Councillor Bateman?
Well, I do note that in their original letter on August 16th, they requested specifically, would you like to partner with us and we are hoping we could receive assistance with planning and financing.
Well, that's not what I have here, but I mean, I don't know. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
God.
so that's
Gee,
the
I don't have
first
any
one.
farther down. Where does it say that?
And the other point would be contact EMCS Society.
Yes.
Because it's the, yeah.
So, you know, once it's confirming a location, like I think it would be a great idea, something safe that and accessible for the community. But I just think that we can't figure out what the funding ask is until, because it's more than the move, you know, until the location is confirmed. Because even if John Phillips was viable, the things like water, the porta potties and the like are all added costs that would be more in addition to this. So this is where I think the location has to be determined, and then we can see
Yeah, if they use
either
Sea
are
Park,
even
for
open
instance,
for
all
it.
those things are there.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility, but they'd have to approach Sea Park, and Sea Park has costs as well, so not everything's
Yeah,
free.
and just what the health plan and all that looks like. That's the challenge. Councillor McMath?
That's exactly my question, was how are they managing the 50 max capacity? And like those sorts of questions, and who, like, are they doing tickets or things like that that are unanswered? And then also, is when it says partnership, is the expectation that we're donating half of the funds there, or is it just like a partial contribution? So maybe just asking for clarification on the financial support as well.
Yeah. And then, so I think with this, and request clarification of the partnership. Yep. So we'll look into it and see what we can do. We just need to get the location sorted first. Councillor Logans?
Can we request a delegation
Yep.
as well? And then that way we could have some dialogue if necessary?
I would say that once they have an alternative location secured,
Okay.
then we should have them present as a delegation, because then we can fine tune it a bit more. I think it's just solving the location. Yeah. Yeah, that's the challenge. I mean, in some cases, what groups have done is they sell their tickets online, and then that's it, and then you need a ticket to get in. And if you no-show, then it's no-show, right? So, I don't know. Okay. All right, so would someone like to move this?
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre, and that is that council direct staff to advise the Sooke Harmony project to contact the MCS Society in Sea Park as an alternative location, request clarification of the partnership, and invite them as a delegation once a location has been secured. Okay? Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So next up, we have a block of correspondence regarding the anticoagulant rodenticides. Ooh, that's a long recommendation. We do have a meeting scheduled with the Minister of Environment this week. I wanted to ask staff if Ms. Hooper is available. Okay, did we get some clarity that, do our staff use rodenticide in their operations in parks? Someone has that answer. Councillor Beddoes?
I did ask that question, and
Okay.
the answer is no. They do
Okay.
not use it.
No.
And so really, it's not much of an issue for them.
Yeah.
They have qualified people on staff, and I personally think that they have some extremely qualified people on staff. So I guess you just answered the question is no, they don't use
Okay.
it. And B, I'd be loath to make a motion that tells them not to when they don't do it already.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. The other one, I'm just wondering there was a report recently that like Vancouver's the rattiest city in the province, Victoria number 2, which I get because they're ports, right? So that tends to happen. And then the only time I hear of stuff locally is in the case of the Tin Grotto, where the rats were moving over into the Legion and eating the Legion lines and the like. It was just rats or mice or both, I'm not entirely sure. So part of it is that once they're all there, and we are moving ahead with rehabilitating that whole site, there could be a colony, I think they're called, come swarming out perhaps. Go ahead. Yeah, and then, and so I agree with this. And when we hear different methods, it's interesting. My in-laws have had Westie dogs forever, and they can snap a rat's. I've seen their dog do it in seconds. It's what they were bred for. So it's just like a way to get a fleet of these Westland Terriers, because that's what they did. Like, that was their job, right? Was to flush out all the vermin. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, there's a couple of points here. Anyways, we were number 2 on the list, by the way, and this was an article in the Times Colonist last week. Sorry?
Not Sooke, though.
No, Victoria, Greater Victoria.
You keep saying we.
Well, we're part of Greater
That's
Victoria.
not us.
Give us a break here. Anyways, there is a very important thing here. Is one, I'm a firm believer. First of all, it's provincial jurisdiction, and I think we should lobby that they take it out of Home Hardware and places like that, because it is not the organized people like ourselves in the district that are putting it out willy-nilly. It is the residents at home that just throw it in their backyard. They kill the rats and everything else. I'll just read it if I can, a little quick thing for the paper. The use of rodenticides where internal bleeding causes death is controlled by the province. The mayors of Saanich and Colbert were asked by councillors to contact the premier asking for the ban of these rodenticides across the province. Day, who is also president of the Structural Pest Management Association of BC, said pest control companies work closely with the provincial and federal guidelines for the safe use of these rodenticides. He said qualified pest control technicians use secure bait traps and remove and dispose of dead rodents in a responsible way to lessen the risk of secondary poisonings. He said throwing rat poison under the deck or placing it in a corner of the yard isn't responsible. So the problem that I see is not necessarily people like the district who don't even use it. It is the general public that don't care. And not all of them, just a few of them, and that's all it takes. So if we leave it in the hands of professionals, I don't see it being a problem. So I'm not so sure we need to ban it here because we don't use it, but I do think we should lobby the provincial government to come up with some tighter controls.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
So I attended the Wildwise meeting 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and it was right about the same time that we started receiving this correspondence. And so I mentioned it to them as a question more than anything. I wasn't sure what we could do to control this, and they said that it's not individuals that are the problem, that it is in fact the pest control companies that are the major offenders. And I was told that there are companies that don't use the pesticides, and they use more humane methods, I guess, of control. But according to Wildwise, it's the pest control companies that are the problem.
Just I can follow up on that. But that's a provincial jurisdiction. They're the ones and that's where our lobbying has to come in, and to get them to, if the pest control companies aren't doing it right, then you fine them. But what are they asking us to do? They're asking us to ban it, use in the municipality. We don't use it, not a problem. And then the other thing they're asking us for is to lobby the government. I'm all for that.
Councillor St. Pierre?
I just need to confirm a few things. The first is that I think Councillor Bateman, when originally brought up pesticide ban, was actually for a different type of pests. And it was for herbicides, and it was actually cosmetic non-herbicides. So I don't know what kind of document went out to the ministry, but we either need to bring both these things into the same conversation or do something about that. So just thought I'd mention that off the top. The other thing is that I agree completely with everything that's been said. These things are a lot like antibiotics. The problem is that, the willy-nilly use of antibiotics means that you end up with resistant bugs. We're getting resistant rats. So you have the professionals go out, they're probably going to nuke those things, and they're going to kill them dead, and they're going to use the appropriate quantities and so on and so forth. You still have a problem with the homeowners basically purchasing this stuff at Home Hardware, and then they're building up a resistant population. They're not technicians of this stuff. They're basically homeowners trying to kill a few rats. There's a problem there. That's definitely a provincial problem. But I think there's a role for education to happen here too. And if the district steps forward with a policy, even if we're already doing it, it's not a problem then, right? But if we step forward with a policy and make it clear, then we're actually providing a model and we're providing an opportunity for education. And we definitely need education. Our residents need to know not to hire companies that are necessarily using this. They need to know that there's humane options. And they need to know that they're not supposed to use it themselves because they're just going to mess things up and create more problems and more rats, which if they knew they were doing, they probably wouldn't buy the stuff. Okay, so I think there's something else happening here a little bit.
Yeah, and the other point too is I recall, when a place where I used to work, and a colleague of mine had rats, and this is in Oak Bay, not in Sooke, and the pest control person who came about and showed the rat trap that they would trap it and take it away and blah, blah, blah. Well, they wanted them dead. Like, they requested that something heavier be used because they don't like rats and they don't want to see them running around or anything. So this is where, even though, and then they went to different providers. So this is where, even if so it is up to homeowners in that way. And if the providers refused to do it, then I think they would, on their own, would have found something, and it would have created this exact same problem. Secondly, while our local stores may choose to ban the product, it doesn't mean that someone doesn't buy it from somewhere else and bring it in. So that's where the province is the case of having to deal with this differently. And I think recent years, I sort of befriended a neighbor's cat that was hanging out in our place all the time, and then one night died in my arms and was bleeding and that was it. And it was just, it happened like that. And they had shared afterwards that the cat did enjoy bringing home rats and mice and the like. So that's where I just wondered now, when we heard some of the speakers talking about the owls and others, like, did the cat ingest a mouse or a rat and then be poisoned because it just happened so quickly, right? I still remember it. So, and this is why I think that I support the way we're going here. Okay, Councillor, are you? Yeah, I'm going to go to Councillor Bateman, and then we do something drafted, but yeah, feel free. Go ahead. It's just hard to read, so if there's any way to enlarge that so Councillor Beddoes can go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing up this letter from Bree Keane, the meat of her letter was cut off at the 2-minute mark, so we didn't get to hear it aloud. So it seems we've received a lot of letters on this subject. There's a wave of municipalities, North Vancouver, North Saanich, Colwood, Richmond, and Saanich, have all made formal motions, as Ms. Keane asked, that even if we're not using it, which is wonderful, great news, she would still like the District of Sooke to formalize its current practices and policies to ensure the continued protection of ecological integrity for now and in the future. So I don't think that's a bad thing to do. That we then, because that's the only one solid thing we can do as a district in terms of not using rodenticides. Second thing, and then you're just following the template these other municipalities have done. To write the Premier, launch some form of public education, which could involve a website page on the district, and then asking Wildwise to take that on as part of their duties serving the district, given that we pay them $7,000 a year at the moment, I think. Yeah, so, I don't know. So, Councillor Beddoes, you were going to make a motion.
Yeah, well, I think that And that's my motion.
Oh geez, I just noticed that. Oh my goodness.
I would like to make a motion that we lobby for the provincial government for tighter controls over rodenticides, and I think that's where the relief will come for the animals. I can even add that the one that was up there before will do nothing to protect the animals, and I'm all for it. It's just that.
Okay, you've made a motion, so
Yeah, there.
you need to stop speaking to it.
Oh, right.
Right?
Jeez.
So the only, and I just, before I call for a seconder, is because we have, of the timing, we do have a meeting with the minister responsible this week. So to me, I don't want to write to the premier asking about something. I'd rather share with him after the fact that we had this meeting and this was our request. So, and then I do feel that while our staff don't use this as in their operations, I think that earlier line about just enshrining it in a policy would be good so that it's there. And it's just more the case of all the rats moving out of the grotto into John Phillips Park or something. They'll all march out somewhere. So that will be a time where are they going to go and what would that evolve? And then some of this other piece about copying all the people and all that. And then I think with Wildwise, it's more a discussion we would have with them when we decide what service planning and whether or not we fund them next year and what our expectations are. So it's just a bit early to say that, ask them to do that when we haven't even discussed what next year look like. So it's a great idea though. I just want to sort of back up the bus a bit until we actually get to that point. So if there's something more, hoping that this might be, if you're okay, and I hear what you're saying about it for point number one, but having something in place. But the second one is that that first part of number two doesn't need to be there. I think that council advise the premier, that council requests the mayor to write on behalf of council. Okay, that's kind of weird. Council advise the premier of the meeting with the Minister Environment after the meeting has occurred about our advocacy, about our requests there. Yes, please.
The council communicate with the appropriate ministers requesting the province of British Columbia ban rodenticide. So communicate covers the meeting in person or writing.
Yeah.
What we have to do.
Perfect.
But we're going to communicate with the appropriate ministers to try and see about a ban.
Yeah, good. That's perfect.
I
Yes.
object.
Okay. So let's sever them. Let's deal with Councillor Beddoes.
I never
not friendly.
said about banning it. I just telling tighter controls. And the reason why I know it's
What's this
dangerous.
on here? Request that, oh, ban, okay.
Well, I don't know. We're having a discussion, and I don't know how this is going now. But it's whatever you want. You want me to stop? I'll stop. But I just want. I was asked to give it out for. I don't want to ban it because what problem with banning it? There may be a no alternative if, say, the Tin Grotto, for instance, was torn down and we're infested with rats, that this stuff might be the best thing if it is properly controlled, and that's the secret.
Okay, so.
That's where the provincial government needs to have tighter controls. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay, so we're going to deal with this is sort of one at a time, and then the first one is that council communicate with the appropriate provincial ministers requesting restrictions on anticoagulant rodenticides. That is what you're moving.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes, I'm good with that.
Is there a seconder for that piece? Councillor Logans, okay? Are we comfortable with that language?
We're just moving that first little piece.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? No, opposed? It's carried unanimously. Okay, now the second part I wanted to do.
No, it wasn't carried unanimously.
Who was opposed?
I'm opposed to this simpler version of something we could do a much better
So
job.
what I'm doing is I'm calling, I've severed that because Councillor Beddoes did not want the other pieces. So the part that I would like to see is that first part that was up there that had something, this part here. that council supports a complete ban of anticoagulant rodenticides on all District of Sooke owned properties and formalize its current practice and policies on anticoagulant, am I saying that right? Rodenticides to ensure the continued protection of ecological integrity for now and in the future. So that's what I would like to see in there. I would like that as, moving that, second it.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Yes.
I'd like to see that we request Wildwise Sooke immediately to begin some gentle public education.
Okay, that's not friendly, so
Isn't
that'll
that?
be another motion, because that's.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll fall into number 3. So
okay.
I'm
Got it.
kind of severing these all apart here. So the first one has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Beddoes is opposed. And now Councillor Beddoes. Bateman. Sorry.
Wildwise Sooke to, not immediate, but begin public education.
So that council requests Wildwise Sooke to begin public education on the harmful impacts of anticoagulant rodenticides and better alternatives that are available.
And that, I would say, high level.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have to go out and.
They know, they do a very
Some
good job
Facebook
of generating
posts.
awareness,
Yes, okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah,
I
so
have.
moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor McMath. Anything further? All those in favor? Opposed? And that too is carried unanimously. So, and that part about sharing the report, I'm not really interested in that. Like,
No.
because what ends up happening is you send out 189 emails, you're gonna get 189 back. And I don't know, like as reply all, it's just, we're working on what we need to do for ourselves. This way we can see we're in the works, we've done our part.
Yes,
Okay?
good.
All right, did we move that? And that Wildwise part, we did? Okay, we're good. Okay, that's excellent.
Wildwise is 2 words.
Okay, no, me too, that's excellent, thank you, everyone, and I appreciate, I appreciate all the public engagement on this too. Okay, 15.4, correspondence on the tree bylaw inquiry. Ms. Machada?
Sorry, I can provide a little bit of an update. As we were discussing earlier, council may recall that there have, I think, have been 2 separate emails in the circulated correspondence in the past few weeks, and our manager of parks has responded. So if I may, Your Worship, I can just respond as to where the district is with the tree bylaw. Council has heard from like-minded citizens on the issue and provided direction to staff to draft a tree management bylaw for its consideration. This community value was echoed through public consultation during the development of the draft Parks and Trails Master Plan, which will be completed in fall of 2020. The district has been working diligently on this and other environmental issues and expects to have a draft bylaw for council consideration in the coming year. So that's where things are at with the tree bylaw.
Okay, anything further? Councillor St. Pierre? Councillor Bateman? Did you have your hand up?
There to be an answer to Councillor St. Pierre's 2021. Yeah, so just to add a bit more context here, there was a petition. Well, first of all, it was Councillor Parkinson who made the motion back in November 2018. Staff report was delivered in May 2019, and at that time, Councillor McMath moved that the direct staff to proceed with public and stakeholder engagement regarding tree management and protection, and incorporate these discussions into the draft tree management bylaws. So at the time, we discussed that the OCP review process was going to come up, and there'd be lots of opportunities so the 2 could be piggybacked upon. So that's great. So we're going to get the public engagement soon. It's important to note that there were almost 3,200 signatures on a petition that launched just a month ago, stated Sooke needs a tree preservation bylaw now. And I guess there is, the mood of that group is sooner rather than later, a mystification as to why Sooke, alone, almost alone among Vancouver Island communities, lacks a tree bylaw. And of course, one could say, well, we're a small town growing into a city, and we're getting there, and things are moving. So that was not included in the petition, was the understanding that we are in fact moving towards a bylaw. So the one thing I would urge tonight to Parks and Environmental Services is that that this becomes prioritized. And so when we say the coming year, given that in fact in our strat plan for the next 6 months there is a reference to a tree bylaw. So rather than coming year, the coming 6 months would be a good reference. There were also concerns about logging on private land, and of course lacking a tree bylaw that could identify protected, red-listed trees of a certain size and species, and other aspects of a tree bylaw. Significant trees, interestingly. In Saanich, for example, they've tagged something in the order of 200 trees in the community and registered these trees as significant to the community. So trees such as the 2 big Douglas firs that were taken down at Evergreen Mall back in 2010 might well still be there if we had that tree bylaw. So so I guess the message I'd like to convey on behalf of quite a few people in Sooke is let's get some action happening on this sooner rather than later. Thank you.
So a couple of things is we do have our priorities set, and we're we're mid-September now. So this is where it has gone into the hopper, and the process will get underway, right?
Thanks, Your Worship. So my direction to our leadership team at our last meeting was we went through the council strategic priority chart. One of the operational strategies under operations is the tree protection bylaw. My expectation is they will be a report on a council agenda before the end of this year. So notwithstanding what our corporate officer read out, that's not my expectation. My expectation are the things that are on this one-page dashboard are the things that are a priority and should be dealt with before the end of this year.
And then
I hope that the Director of Operations heard that.
If not, we'll remind them. And just a note on the petition is that that's never actually come to council, or has it? Have we received that? So it's all fine for petitions to occur online, and I hear of this sometimes, but somebody or whoever creates it actually has to bring it to us, so then we can receive it as correspondence. And then, because saying that X amount of people have signed on to something, if it's on there's different sites that do this, it doesn't enter into us. So it's great when people, I've done that petition, well, you did it online, you never did anything with it.
So Ms. Iskew, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, she launched this, her letter is in the correspondence package, along with 20 links to tree bylaws on Vancouver Island. So the message to, as you say, is please submit that petition for our next, for information for council and staff.
But and that's fine if she chooses to do that, but we also have staff now working on this and bringing it forward. So it's September, it's the end of the year. I don't see that moving up a month or two just because we receive a petition at the end of October. Like, we're working on it.
No, that's what I was stating. I wanted it sooner rather than later, and clearly the CAO has just stated sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Okay, so what I heard you say again was bring the petition and we'll move it sooner. I'm like, but it is. I don't think it can get any sooner than that. Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just want to make an observation. Actually, I read some of these tree bylaws with great interest, and believe it or not, I'm for some sort of a tree bylaw. I just caution that we get something that's sensible and workable in Sooke. I didn't particularly like when I got sort of shown the Oak Bay tree law. We're not Oak Bay. Oak Bay cut down all their good trees many years ago. But in reading people's concerns, most of the concerns were dealing with big blocks of trees taken down, whole sides of mountains and things like that, and not the Joe Blow guy that has a half-acre lot that wants to take down a tree or two on his property. So I just want to let council know that, you know, when you do draft this tree bylaw, do not adopt somebody else's. Let's have something that is made here for Sooke, and understanding that a lot of our properties are bigger than Oak Bay's, and we don't need to be too harsh with their local residents. Let's deal with what people are upset with, and that's the wholesale slaughter of acres and acres of trees at one time. And that has, so anyways, just a little comment.
Okay, great. So motion to receive the correspondence. Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Beddoes, and I think any, I used to work in the forest industry, and I think any sort of tree bylaw that is adopted needs to be based on science and common sense, because there are some trees that rot from the inside out, and they may look like a beautiful live tree, but it's just a very thin shell holding the tree together, and they can be extremely dangerous. I like trees, but there are many people that I'm fond of as well, and when trees become dangerous, they need to be taken out.
Yeah, and we will discuss that fully. I mean, sadly, we have experienced that impact for that reason. Okay, so looking for that council receive the correspondence for information. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Next up is 15.5. This is a request for a no parking sign on one side of Sea Lion Way. It's just with the busyness of Whiff and Spit, the residents there are having some challenges. So they're open to parking, but obviously looking for, they still need egress, safe egress in and out of their property. So they're just requesting that parking on one side of the street be banned and we install signs. Ms. Machada.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could actually ask our Director of Operations to speak to that. There's already some signage and works in the works. I believe that will be installed next week. So if...
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. We've been working with the residents down in the area. What we've done to have a short-term solution for the capacity problems down there, as we have put up signage, and I was advised that it did go in today, and the residents have responded to that. The signage is basically enforcing our existing bylaw, not permitting parking within 2 meters of a driveway. By putting this up and reinforcing this down there, we'll reduce the capacity on the streets and address their concerns in the short term. For long-term parking solutions down there, it is identified in the Parks and Trail master plan to have a area plan for the Whiff and Spit area, which will be brought forward for one of the short-term projects.
Okay, and to clarify then, you have been in conversation with the residents, the impacted residents, so they're aware of this happening then? I just want to close the loop on the correspondence.
Correct. We have been in contact with the residents, and they have acknowledged the signage that is in place as of today.
Perfect. Okay, so that's great. Thank you very much. So at this point, just a motion to receive, please. Moved by Councillor McMath and seconded by Councillor Bateman. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. Next up is 15.6, correspondence regarding fare free in the CRD from Councillor Bateman.
Shall I take a shot at it here? Yeah, I did request it, and I guess that's the policy now. When these correspondence pieces are brought forward, you identify who's requested it, and then it's up to the individual who's requested it to take the lead. Okay, so I bring this up only because I had it's important to acknowledge it and get it into the record that there is a movement, as Mr. Phillip said earlier, a desire to see increased transit and ways in which we can get there to inspire mode shift at this difficult time. And, the mayor can speak and may want to speak if she's not exhausted with saying the same things again and again about how in this difficult year of COVID and the fact that the fleet needs to be replaced to a degree, electrification, and big revenue hits on BC Transit's revenue by distributing free passes to segments of the population make operational matters difficult. I brought it up because in light of the Sooke local area transit plan, which was presented to us, and the fact that there is a dramatically expanded new local routes, which are to be distinguished from regional routes. So we're not talking about the 61 taking riders into Langford and Victoria, but we're talking about these local routes, which are, as the Transportation Master Plan says on page 10 in its draft form, transit ridership within Sooke itself is low and service is largely viewed as inadequate by residents. Low ridership is a barrier to justifying expanded service. So I can't think of a better way to introduce and firmly establish local routes than by making them free for young people and perhaps also young families and those in need, so that, I just keep seeing big buses driving down Whiff and Spit with literally one or two people, if anyone, aboard the bus. So to provide free service for specific target demographics on local routes might be a useful pilot project to be investigated next year, once and perhaps BC Transit would see the wisdom of this, because the City of Victoria has to pay, I think, $11 per pass for its 7,000 or so passes that they buy every month for young people, which is currently having only a 40% uptake. They still have to pay for them all. Perhaps BC Transit would recognize that they want to establish local bus routes, and this is a good way to do so. And they might cut us a deal or offer it freely for a two-year pilot period or something.
Okay, so thank you for bringing this forward. I don't support the free youth transit program. I did not support it at the commission, and that was pre-COVID. Our youth have school buses to take them to school. In the core, they don't. So part of it was getting students to be independent and to choose transit. We surveyed one another one time when it was all about counselors all taking transit, and it was impossible for us even to find our way home. Many of us agreed it would be quicker to walk, and in some cases it's completely impossible. When there was a study done, and yes, ridership would increase. However, that means more buses, more service, more everything would be needed, which means our service expansion would be pushed down the line. Yes, I don't know which bus you're referring to that goes by empty, but when the 61 leaves Sooke, and it's full. It's full.
Talking about local.
The local routes we have a problem with, and we've identified because they run 3 times a day they don't serve youth at all. And so when it was the talk of youth being able to access those buses, they would either have to leave school early or hang around and then catch a ride. It doesn't serve the school hours because they're not designed to meet youth. When do youth need a ride? Perhaps after school and on weekends, and these buses don't run. So that's why the focus should be on getting the local area buses system running. At this point, transit system is just rapidly losing money. They have a lot they have to do for added cleaning and the like, plus months of no fare collection because of rear loading and so forth. So until we know what the federal and provincial dollars are going to be to sort of rescue transit, it would be impossible to offer anything for free. Also, when surveyed, and Transit has done this many times through their transit open houses, when they talk about how and why you would choose transit, it's having reliable service. Free doesn't register. It's about having reliable service. So that's what matters. We've sponsored things for folks from affordability. I can't remember the program where we've provided some bus passes. We've also sponsored the refugee program to provide bus passes. Those are great things to support. But in this time, there is no free ride, because then what would happen is, in the case of Victoria, they figured, okay, the downtown parking would offset that. No, the revenue wasn't there, so it came on taxes, and that's how they've chose to fund this program. In our cases, we don't have anything to generate the money. It would be property taxes. And so now you're going to put the people who travel the most to go in and out of Victoria every day, making that choice. Now you're going to pay more in your property taxes or pay more in your fare so someone else can get a free ride. I just cannot support it when we already have families that are really struck. We need to get the service here. We already know from our presentation from Transit, we have the highest mode share in the region. We do better than Victoria. And maybe their youth are not using transit because they're taking or using one of the bike lanes that they put in, which is a better option than using the bus. Is it not? And in terms of electrification, it doesn't work to get a bus out this way. The run on the electric bus doesn't work. So in Victoria they're running, in Saanich they're running because there's a shorter distance. For ours it doesn't work. There would be nothing to put youth away from a bus than a bus that is stuck on Highway 14, and you're going to wait there for another hour longer for another bus to come along and bail you out. It's not going to entice anyone to ride the bus. Right now there are the compressed natural gas CNG buses that are lower emission, that are running out here. They're quieter, not as much GHG and all the like. The best thing we can do is continually focus on getting the service expansion so that those that actually need it to get to work, to do their daily day, can get there in a safe and reliable way. Because right now, and I've been on a bus when it's broken down, and you have a 2-decker bus, and then a lowrider comes up and you all cram on it, there is nothing more to put you off from riding the bus than that type of an experience. So I appreciate that there's been a real movement in our community to do this. We do not have the service here that our young people need. We do not have the service here that our families need. We do not have the service that our seniors need. We're lobbying for more service. We'll see how that goes. I will not support this. I will not support it here, and I will not support it on transit until I see that our residents have the equal service that we deserve, the same as everyone else in the core. Our ridership is there. Let's make it more attractive and more reliable. I don't want to see any. Now, anyone can write to us on fare free, but I will not be supporting this.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we can just receive this. Well, there was a whole comment about, this was what happened in the meeting. There was a young person that came up and said, give them free transit and these young people will vote for you in a future election. What is that? That's like a bullying tactic. Give you something for free so you'll vote for me in the future? What kind of a message does that send to young people? It made me ill, and it was just, no, that's not a reason. We need the service.
Can I make a
comment? Please go ahead.
If we do anything, it has to be on a regional basis. I don't like to see all these balkanized, this municipality does this municipality does that. Transit is a CRD regional. Not CRD, but it's part of the, it's a regional, capital D regional district, but it's not controlled by the CRD, I understood. But it's a regional thing. And, you know, if you have Machosen doing one thing and City Victoria, who just drives me crazy with some of these things, it has to be all or nothing. You make it, if there's the money there, which I don't want to put it on the taxpayers, but if the money was there, then make it for the whole region, not just for Sooke, not just for Victoria, not just for Machosen. And I don't think the will's there, and I don't think the dollars are there. So I can't support it for just Sooke. It's a wonderful idea, but it's just not practical.
Councillor Logans.
Move receipt.
Move receipt, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Okay. Anything to add to that, Councillor Logans? No. Councillor St. Pierre?
I'll be brief. I was hoping that maybe during UBCM, maybe we could talk to the minister in charge of social services, PWD specifically. I think the people on welfare should probably have a free pass. It happens in other provinces. Why don't we just get them to pay for it, at least for that particular population?
Because we're asking the province to bail out transit. We're asking, can you please give us money to keep our system whole? And then we can't say, please give this money so we can give some people something for free. We need to make transit whole again. So no, it's not something we can ask for. And the Premier has said that publicly. There's many programs which we have supported to get people on bus passes. It exists. Councillor Bateman.
Okay, I guess I keep learning that to make a simple request becomes like a much larger theatric soapboxing almost. What I stated was that the Transportation Master Plan states transit ridership within Sooke, we're not talking about regional service, is low, and service is largely viewed as inadequate by residents. Ipso facto, the local area transit plan is coming up with a new series of routes. It's a use it or lose it scenario. We have very low ridership on local routes. Is there a way to ask BC Transit, would you be interested in providing a pilot period of free transit to establish these routes? That's all. Nothing, I'm not talking about any other routes. I'm talking strictly local. I'm not supporting this motion from Sooke Fare Free Youth. I'm simply stating this is one way to approach BC Transit. Andrea McMullen is, at BC Transit, is very interested in getting local routes happening. And this is one way.
Yes, and
to
that
at least consider it.
Use it or lose it, no one uses it, and we still have the right service. I had wondered that when the bus came by with a couple of people and few uptake because of the one-way nature of it. So now they've recognized it and they're putting in the routes to service our community. So anyway, if you want to make that motion, we can see if there's a seconder and take it from there.
So there's already a motion on the table.
There's a motion on the table to receive for information.
I will personally write Andrea McMullen and see if there is any interest in exploring ways to...
Your microphone isn't on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll discuss this motion here. So that's been moved and seconded that council receive the correspondence for information. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously.
Yeah.
Okay? And if you choose to write, but Transit has, the commission that I sit on, has done a full report on why fare-free transit is not possible, and we're in a point right now where we're advocating for federal and provincial bailout. Because otherwise, the impact on our property taxes is going to be tremendous, or we're going to have to enter into significant service cuts. So that's where the commission's at, and it's not meeting until we know the outcome of that provincial federal decision. Okay, the next one is on expanded correspondence for expanded patios. Geez, I'm adding a lot to this meeting, aren't I? So this is just here. We have done some matters now for our, and it was more for information because we have made some requests to staff about the patios, but then that I thought had a timeline to the end of October. But now that we know that where we're at going forward, and that's where I crafted a notice of motion. So this is in here now, just looking on how we can support our businesses, weather this pandemic a little bit better going on. And so here's just something that came forward here. Is there anything further from staff on this, or anything that's doable, or?
Myself and the Director of Planning and Development had a quick chat about this today. Certainly in favor of expediting any applications that come in regarding winterizing or extending the October 31st delegation of duties that's currently in place. What we can't do is circumvent the building regulation bylaw. And one of those is on the winterization side, the definition of structure in our bylaw states anything, basically anything that has a roof. So when it comes to public assembly and having a thing like an enclosed space for winterization of patios, it still has to follow the building permit application. So at this point, my suggestion to council is the best that we can do if we get direction from council to do so is to expedite the applications that they come in. But to go around the requirements in the building bylaw likely would require an amendment to that bylaw, and especially the way that we define structures in the bylaw.
So for our businesses that we have done the temporary patios, is it their liquor license that they have to renew, or how does it trigger to go beyond? Like
go beyond the October 31st deadline?
Yeah.
Well, that was just a decision of council to expand the delegation of duties to the Director of Planning and Development, and that delegation of duties expires on October 31st.
Okay, so then anyone that wanted to continue, then they would need to make a request back to council? Or do the delegated to the staff expires then and it comes back to us?
Correct.
Okay, so that's where I think it's just now that we know more, can we just see that motion that there was some, just given that this may continue, just looking for opportunities so that they can continue on here. And so will this cover that off? That delegation of authority that we've passed to staff, or do we need to add that in there as well?
Well, I'm unsure on what, for example, item number 2 is asking for, approving temporary patios for the summer of 2021 now. So I'm assuming that that is different than the ask in item number 1, which is to expedite businesses where winterization of patio is being asked for.
Okay, so maybe we can just consider the first one.
So expediting the applications, absolutely. If we get direction from council, those will go to the top of the pile. There will be some ramifications for that with other applications that are in. The suggestion from the Alliance of Beverage Licenses is that time is of the essence with this because the winterization of these patios and taking advantage of the confidence in outdoor spaces, as the suggestion is these winterization things need to be in effect fairly soon in order to carry on the use of the outdoor space as we have through the summer and fall here.
Okay, it's just as this wears on, the impact on our small businesses is quite significant, and I am concerned for many on, now that as tours, whatever drops off and is going to, how will they be able to weather sort of the off-season months. So that's where when I saw this, I brought it forward. It's similar to a notice of motion that I kind of crafted quickly, but the first part may cover that as an avenue for our businesses. Councillor McMath in St. Pierre.
I was going to move that council direct staff to expedite applications for businesses to winterize patios in public and private spaces to provide operators with opportunity to capitalize on the confidence of outdoor space.
Okay, that's moved. Seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. Is there anything you'd like to add, Councillor McMath? No. Councillor St. Pierre? Okay, Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, the only thing is I have some concern about winterized patios in the public and private spaces. Exactly what does that mean? How safe is it? Does it involve our building inspectors? I mean, I guess if somebody puts plastic up and then has a propane heater in, it could be a fire hazard. I'm not sure how it's done. I just asked for clarification from staff.
Correct. So the requirements of the building code for any structure that is under the code would have to be met.
Okay, that's what I want.
Yep. Anything further? Okay, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Item 3 is,
Pickup zones, because this involves their fall and winter business practices.
I didn't know what that quite meant. I mean, now I think businesses have found a way. I was thinking that was more when people were trying to drop stuff off and couldn't go into stores. And it's different now, like you can actually, our businesses have figured out that.
Right.
So. No. I mean, that's how they're delivering to their our businesses are finding ways to get their goods, products to their customers. And it's hard to know that because we'd have to study each one. Single lane traffic, whatever it is, they figured it out. I think it's up to the business to make sure something works for them. Okay, the other one is just for your information that I received from some of our young people regarding the stairs here in John Phillips Memorial Park. They had hoped to approach council about putting in an accessible ramp, but I also know that the stairs are very steep. So in order to put a ramp there, it would be extremely dangerous actually to do that. Yeah, and then the market here, this was a trial period for them to see how the location fit, and it's something that maybe we can examine in the future. It's just not the place for a ramp. It's very steep. So I just wanted to share some feedback from some of the volunteers that are at our Saturday market. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, actually, I went and had a look at it, and I think it's pretty easy that it's a really, really big staircase or a ramp that you'd have to put in. It would make the other staircase that we built last year seem very cheap. But there is an idea that I looked at where people drive in. We have the bollard there. If you move that bollard back 10 feet, you could put 2 handicap parking spaces down there. So if some handicap person wants to use the park, they could park there as opposed to our parking lot. So that might be something that we look for in the future. It's not a big thing right now. But it would be a heck of a lot cheaper than building a ramp just by moving the bollard and the 2 rocks. You could put 2 parking spots down easily.
Yeah, so that's all good feedback for the market and something we can consider, next year and who knows what the health orders will be at that time. So it's here for your information. Motion to receive by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor McMath. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. We have been receiving information or comments from members of the public in regards to our temporary homeless shelter that is next door, and members of council have responded. I've done some postings. Yes, there has been some unfortunate incidents there. In talking or in an email exchange with the shelter manager, they do put in a code of conduct that they have with their residents that they want residents to buy into. And sometimes, in many cases, it's working very well. In other cases, it isn't. So this is where some residents have been ejected and some have been turned away. So yes, there have been police calls to help them deal with some of the more difficult persons. I do have a radio interview coming up Wednesday on CFAX to discuss the matter. But in terms of the, syringes in the parks, our bylaw enforcement officer told me in the time he's been here, he's only found 1 needle in the whole time. The police have gone through and looked for reports, found nothing, and that's all confirmed in a report that they sent to me. And there's also the staff and the volunteers there that are actively looking and picking up and trying to keep the area safe. I know some residents don't like the idea that it's in the park, and I appreciate the concern that they have. It just leaves us, if not there, where? And I don't know where is, and in some cases, well, not in Sooke at all. Well, we do have our concerns and our challenges as a community, just like everyone else's. So here's where we're at. Councillor Logans?
Just one important clarification. It's not in the park. It's on private property.
Well, and there's none there either, but they're saying that they're in the parks. And unfortunately, there are other users who come in and use in the park and may not even be associated with the shelter. And certainly when I wrote the piece about or when I posted the piece about the use, I mean, that's why the washroom at Ed McGregor Park is always closed because of challenges with that. And when we looked at the type of washroom we were going to install, we put in a pit toilet. That was a deliberate choice because of the challenges that we have with the other ones. So, or not over yet, but anyway, it's here for your information. Just a motion to receive. By Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. The other one is correspondence regarding crosswalks in Sooke Town Centre. So on you.
Yeah, I brought that forward just because it was such a good reply by our new Director of Operations to a legitimate concern from a citizen about, I guess there's 3 crosswalks in the town centre, and he was stating that many times, quote unquote, he's had to come to a fast, hard stop because of negligent pedestrians, and he'd like to see flashing lights at those crosswalks. And Mr. Carter replied and made it clear that that's not ministry policy. Too much sign distractions. That's the word. So the message there again to Mr. Anderson and other drivers is please drive defensively in the middle of town, and just I don't think we've lost anyone yet. So touch wood. That's a dangerous thing to say.
It's a dangerous statement.
Probably stupid. Another stupid moment from Bateman. Okay.
That's okay, but I'll argue that every area that we live, we have someone asking for a pedestrian activated. Like even in Sun River, I've had requests from residents, there'd probably be like 4 in that subdivision if we were able to put all of them in there. So part of it is pedestrians looking both ways, wait till vehicles stop. And you know, I'm having the experience right at Sooke Elementary where there's one there, and thankfully there's a crossing guard in school hours to get you across this, because it's difficult there. That's a difficult one. Councillor Lajeunesse?
So the one crosswalk that is an issue in the town center is the one at Townsend Road, because it's on the crest of a hill and a corner. And I've had many times where I've been traveling west, and if there's a pedestrian crossing south to north, you can't see them because the A pillar in your car blocks the view. Unless you lean forward and really look for them, you can't see someone in that crosswalk. And people have been complaining about that ever since that crosswalk was installed. And so I think that one, it would make sense to do something to highlight it more, either with overhead signs or the flashing lights, whatever.
And maybe, but the challenge here where pedestrians are just darting out won't solve that. Because even where there's the buttons, and I've seen it at the crossing where the goose is, it's like people aren't pressing it. They're just running out across, trying to run across the road and not wait for traffic to stop. Yeah, and so that's not going to help. Move receipt by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor McMath. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Council verbal reports. I have nothing to share because my whole mind and everything has been occupied with back to school. Microphone for Councillor Meadows.
Those going to Sea Park tomorrow, you have a very, very full agenda and a lot of really interesting stuff. So Dana, stay alert.
Is there any chance we could see that agenda before the meeting?
It's been emailed out.
Did they not send you one?
I haven't got it.
Okay, we'll forward it to you.
I didn't get one either as alternate.
I'll forward you yours then. That's just a correction. They just need to capture the email
I got it
list.
written down what you'd be doing.
Okay,
I'll talk to you after too.
Anything else from anyone at this time? Nope. Okay. And so then is that the September 14, 2020 regular meeting be adjourned and that we reconvene the in-camera portion. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried unanimously. All right. How many people went on YouTube?
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to end the meeting.
We don't know if there's staff.
Yeah, it's 100% staff. Do you know what's Jen?
What's Jen, yeah.
I- Dana, I just sent it to you.
That is, my still on.
Oh!